everyone's forgotten since.
Yeah, I know.
Have you ever got into any trouble for teasing people about the answer?
Stop. You see, now you're going to get me into trouble. Something's going to happen tomorrow and I'm going to dig a big hole for myself. Libel cases and stuff like that.
That's all part of the crack, isn't it?
Be bailing me out of jail.
Nah. Well, sure, we have, 1,100? Is it 1,000?
But it's not your money. It's not even mine.
Does it exist?
Well,
it does.
It's a number, isn't it? It's like Bitcoin, isn't it?
All right, but what time do you do the early session on that? Because a lot of people tune in a little bit
I had a woman
later
from
sometimes.
Glasgow this morning.
Very good.
And I had a guy from Michigan,
So
US.
it's just after 7:30 you do the first round, isn't it?
Yeah, just the first song, after news song, and then we do
Brilliant.
secret
Okay.
song. Yeah, it's a bit of fun.
Of course it is, just for in case people want to try the other time as well to get through, because the phones be hopping. All right, Lee, have a lovely day, will you?
You too. Good luck.
It's going to brighten up a little later on for you, cutting your hedge if you ever get round to it. All right, the 9 till noon show just around the corner. Let's get a news update first, though, and say good morning, Donna Marie Doherty.
Thanks, Greg. Good morning. A Donegal deputy says there needs to be an increase in development in rural towns and villages. Deputy Thomas Pringle, speaking during a motion on planning and rural housing, says the current housing crisis is being exacerbated by the current planning system. He says a review of policy is vital for the development of rural areas.
I believe that we need to significantly increase development of our rural towns, and not just our bigger towns but our smaller villages too. If we are serious about repopulating our rural areas, then this type of development needs to be prioritised. It is not enough to develop areas such as Donegal Town and Glenties, although development here is critically needed too, but we need to be looking at further developing villages such as Teelan, Carrick and Glenconkill. We need proper policy that prioritises the development of rural areas, and I support the call for this in this motion.
The MICA Action Group have published 13 sets of amendments for the draft defective concrete block regulations following a consultation with key stakeholders. The amendments cover 6 separate regulations and 3 schedules. This follows a virtual meeting between the group and Housing Minister Darragh O'Brien yesterday for a briefing on the revised scheme, which is expected to be published in the coming weeks. The amendments can be read in full on our website, highlandradio.com. Meanwhile, the Dáil has heard calls for penalty-free downsizing to be included in the enhanced redress scheme for defective block homeowners. Donegal Deputy Joe McHugh says allowing homeowners to downsize as part of the scheme would be hugely beneficial.
Penalty-free downsizing, which should be voluntary, is an important element, and I think both environmentally and also financially, penalty-free downsizing is an important issue that should be part of the new scheme, and it will make the scheme that much stronger.
Much needed water rehabilitation works are set to be carried out in the Finn Valley later this year. The area has been plagued with a range of issues affecting water supply from Loch Mourne, with residents frequently left without water. Cahirlock of the Lifford Stranorder Municipal District, Councillor Patrick McGowan, says the works will slignificantly improve the everyday lives of the needs of people.
Been upgrading pipes now from the reservoir down at the Castle Fan, and also from the main roads from Swilly down at the Castle Fan, plus a couple of other jobs in Dunkeene and about Lifford and that. So this is all going to do, because we're losing water at alarming rate in the summertime. In the winter time we're told to turn off the water because of frost and bus, and then the summertime we're turned off again, and then this is issues with livestock and animals and everything, because we're a big farming area.
Looking to the weather this morning, mostly cloudy at first today with fairly widespread showers, some heavy. Highest temperatures of 13 to 15 degrees, with winds becoming northerly, mostly moderate, but fresh and gusty for a time in the northwest. That's all for now. We'll be back with the news in full and obituary notices at 10 o'clock. Until then, good morning.
Joe Brolly's genetic makeup drove him to lift championships, collect all-stars, and now informs his cutting-edge opinions. GAA is in Joe's DNA, and it's in ours at Independent Sport. Read Joe's microscopic GAA coverage in the Irish Independent and Sunday Independent. Irish Independent. Up close and independent.
The county's #1 talk show, The 9 till Noon Show on Highland Radio. And now, it's time for the talk of the Northwest, The 9 till Noon Show with Greg Hughes on Highland Radio.
Good morning to you. 4 minutes past 9 on this Thursday, the 11th of May, 2023. Welcome along to another edition of the 9 till Noon Show. And I do, of course, hope that you're all very well indeed. And hopefully you're involved in the programme today, as so many of you always are. Even if you've never texted radio show before, get your views on air here on your local radio station. You WhatsApp and text us to 086 60 25,000, 086 60 25,000, or give us a call on 07491 25,000. And it's about things that are important to you as well. So if you're listening and there's something that you want to talk about, it can be in the positive or the negative, don't think no one else is interested. Contact us and talk to us, and we'll see what we can do to platform or help or whatever might be required. Did I say 07491 25,000 is how you get through to Caroline and Niamh working on the show today. And of course, emails to comments@highlandradio.com. You're more than welcome to, if you choose to, join the 500,000 live minutes viewed every single month across our social media. 500,000 minutes viewed of this show on YouTube, Highland Radio Ireland, or across our Facebook pages, or by clicking live, clicking watch live on our website, and get involved that way as well. It's a Thursday, so as you know, it's a bumper morning for newspapers. Let's see what's making the headlines today. Let's start with the Tyrconnell Tribune. Micah Group forces Fianna Fáil to listen up. That was the scene on Monday evening in Letterkenny when a deputation from the Micah campaign confronted Fianna Fáil's leading lights at the community centre and successfully forced their way to the top of the agenda. Leading Micah campaigner Paddy Diver said the silence from the Fianna Fáil top table was notable, given that a mother of 3 children addressed the politicians about her dire circumstances. She is not in the Micah scheme, but her house is crumbling and she's got nowhere to go. She emptied her heart out at that meeting and left in tears, Mr Diver said. Paddy Diver told the Tribune that there is no sign of the government parties making the absolute essential changes required to the defective blocks redress scheme. The Donegal Democrat reports on life-changing injuries for a Garda in drug dealer chase. A Garda suffered serious neck and back injuries while giving chase to a Donegal drug dealer who was attempting to evade arrest while in possession of over €17,000 worth of cocaine. Detective Sergeant Jerry Farry was dragged through a hedge and plunged 5 feet into a field as he attempted to apprehend Robert Orr on April 12th last year, or 2021, I beg your pardon. Orr, who has 56 previous convictions, will be sentenced on Friday after pleading guilty to the possession of a controlled drug with the intention of selling it or otherwise supplying it to others. The Donegal News covers a story which has gained massive traction locally and nationally, of course. A Donegal man who abandoned his partially dressed 2-year-old child on a road in Letterkenny at 5 a.m. has been jailed for 3 years at the Circuit Court sitting in Letterkenny on Tuesday. Judge John Aylmer, passing sentence, said the father had exposed the infant to extreme dangers of all kinds. The man, who cannot be named to protect the identity of that child, pleaded guilty to child cruelty for exposing the child to a significant risk of death or injury in what was a premeditated act. Garda Sergeant Frank McDade had previously detailed to the District Court the events of the early hours of August 8th, 2020, when 2 men returning from a night out on hearing a child crying were shocked to find the child, who was wearing socks and no shoes, holding a bottle outside a construction site at Thorn Road at 5 a.m. The 2 men knocked on nearby doors, but no one identified the child as theirs. They thought that she had just wandered out. As it turned out, then contact was made with the guard station. The child was collected, and then the mother collected the child, I believe. The Derry News this morning: the increasing challenges faced by doctors working in general practice across the Foyle area were discussed at an event facilitated by the Derry GP Federation. Local GPs came together at the event, which took place on April 25th, to share learning on surviving this difficult time. On to the Irish Independent now, and name and shame threat for profiteering supermarkets. Supermarkets that price gouge could be named and shamed under plans being examined by the government. Enterprise Minister Simon Coveney is developing a suite of measures aimed at ensuring that major retailers are not profiting from customers by keeping food prices high despite inflation slowing down. He's examining whether to introduce new reporting mechanism for companies that would require them to detail margins they're making on certain products. Mr. Coveney is also considering plans to force retailers to reveal specific profits they make from Irish customers, even if businesses are based in other countries. It's about more transparency around who's making what margin and ensuring that the customers are getting a fair deal here, he told the Irish Independent. And as we mentioned on the show last week, wasn't it, we've got the farmers who create an awful lot of the produce we're talking about, not the dry goods, the milk, the cheese, the butter, the bread, what have you. And then you have the retailer that sells it. But what goes on in between? How much money are they making? How much money is the factories making? So maybe a bit more transparency would help, and it might even help the farming community, who they themselves, I'm sure, are very worried that any reductions that the supermarkets are making at the moment, we've seen milk come down, butter come down, bread coming down, that it is the farmer or the producer that's going to end up carrying the can on that. On to the Irish Times now, and the coalition is coming under pressure from government TDs over plans to put aside large sums of money in a multi-billion euro fund designed to protect the economy from future shocks. That's the rainy day fund, okay? So that's language we are familiar with. Minister for Finance, Michael McGrath, has announced plans to channel part of an expected 65 billion euro budget surplus into a long-term public sector savings vehicle. According to an options paper drawn up for the government, up to 90 billion in windfall corporation tax revenues could be put into the new fund by 2030, although the government has yet to decide exactly how much to set aside. There is resistance growing among backbench TDs, however, who feel there should be more of a focus on assisting households struggling with cost of living pressures at present. In the options paper, Mr McGrath said that in headline terms, it is fair to say that our public finances are currently in a sweet spot. A large budgetary surplus was recorded last year, and assuming no major shock to the economy, my department is projecting an expansion of the surplus in the years ahead. So it's not just last year, this year and next year. He expects this corporate tax cash cow to continue, but instead of, and I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do, but instead of actually maybe dragging the 200,000 children out of poverty that currently live in it, we are going to be putting it away for a rainy day. On to the Farmers Journal. Their lead story, Limousin cattle have the lowest daily methane emissions. Initial results from a groundbreaking Irish research project have found. Early results from a €3 million €5 study at the Irish Cattle Breeding Federation Performance Test Centre in Kildare found that Limousin sired cattle performed best from an emissions perspective while not compromising weight gain. Their farts and burps are least toxic, it seems. Simential and Hereford sired cattle had the highest daily emissions of the breed studied. The pioneering green breed research project is headed by Teagasc's Professor Donna Berry and involves the ICBF Teagasc and the Department of Agriculture. Going on to the red top tabloids now, and this is I don't know really how much one can comment on this because it is a case that's going before the courts. Suffice to say, I did raise my eyebrows and would have an awful lot to say on it, really. The Irish Daily Mail. A Garda is to face a criminal prosecution over his driving in relation to an incident in which 3 men were killed in a collision 2 years ago while fleeing Gardaí. Dublin District Coroner's Court heard the DPP has directed a Garda involved in the pursuit at the three males, who were members of a Tallaght-based criminal gang that specialised in burglaries, is to be charged with a driving offence. The 3 victims were killed instantly when their BMW vehicle burst into flames following a head-on crash with a truck on the N7 between City West and Baldonnel on July 7th in 2021 while they were driving on the wrong side of the carriageway. We're going to do a little bit more on that story later on in the programme to try and get a little bit more detail on that, so stay tuned for that. The Irish Daily Star, Finance Minister Michael McGrath has welcomed a court ruling forcing a financial services company to halve the mortgage rate it was charging a distressed borrower. This is important for any of you out there, I think, with Pepper Finance to keep an eye on this, because there is some good advice one can follow. In fact, we might chase down a PIP on this to see how, if you are in this position, it might be able to benefit you. Because there are means and ways that you could try and achieve the same outcome this couple did. Pepper Finance will now be locked into a fixed rate of 2.5% for the next 25 years on the loan of over €280,000. It comes after Judge Mary O'Malley Costello gave the green light to a personal insolvency agreement for a couple at a sitting at Tullamore Circuit Court. I believe that loan owners and mortgage providers should be offered fixed rate options to their borrowers, Michael McGrath said. He said that under the Code of Conduct on Mortgage Arrears, lenders are only required to consider alternative repayment arrangements and are not required to look at their options, including fixed rate. So this couple got a very very good deal in the end, 2.5% over 25 years. I believe, and as I say, maybe we'll get an expert on this because it could be of use to some of you out there. They went through MABS and they had a PIP who proposed to the company a payment structure. The company rejected that, and it's then through Awalia, I believe it is, that they took a case, and it's through that case that the judge fixed this rate. So a precedent has been set there, and as I say, some people out there may be able to benefit from that down the line. Who is to say? The Irish Sun this morning, state witness Jonathan Dowdall will have his appeal against the severity of his prison sentence for facilitating the murder of Kinahan cartel member David Byrne heard next month. The Court of Criminal Appeal will hear his case on June 20. It's unlikely that the former Sinn Féin councillor, who's 44, will be in attendance for the hearing. He pleaded guilty to the Section 72 offence last October after a murder charge was dropped. And finally, the row over the Eurovision rumbles on. Wild Youth's frontman Conor O'Donoghue has blasted Eurovision organisers. The band crashed out of the semi-final stage in Liverpool on Tuesday night and failed to make it through to the grand final. Conor said in a deleted post, "The truth is they never gave Ireland a chance. Sorry if we let you down. We tried our best." You didn't let us down. You did try your best. I think too, though, the organisers of that competition need to look at how it works in this day and age with social media and going viral and what have you. The bands that got through, even the ones that were a bit dodgy, right? They had huge followings and success on social media already. You know, how you use social media, how you try and get viral. They had done that. We didn't really do that. We had one video of them, not a very good video that was released, and also the performance on the Late Late Show, you know, not very Eurovision-y. Then you have other acts who make crazy videos or something catch you viral, potentially viral. It does go viral, and then they're known well in advance of the competition. We don't do that. We need to do that. But talk of bringing Johnny Logan back, I've got nothing but respect for Johnny Logan and what he's achieved. But to think that we go back to the 80s or 90s and try and get people who had success then to try and deliver success now is a bit naive as well, I think. But anyway, 17 minutes past 9. Let's take a break whilst we get our next guest on to introduce to you.
The 9 till noon show is brought to you by Letterkenny Credit Union, offering low-rate car loans with fast approval. Apply online at letterkennycu.ie or in office today.
Most people say that Donegal is the coolest place on the planet, but up here we know that sometimes it can be the coldest. Charles Brunner & Sons Ballybuffet is the one-stop shop for all your heating needs. We have a huge range of multi-fuel and wood pellet stoves and ranges, spare parts for all major stove and range brands, plumbing and bathroom ware, all at exceptional prices. So visit our showrooms where our friendly and experienced team will be ready to help you. Charles Brunner & Sons Ballybuffet and the stovestore.ie, where you can always do a good deal better.
Charge into summer with TUI. Secure your holiday today with savings for families and adults flying from Dublin, Cork and Shannon. Holiday sorted. TUI. Live happy.
Do you know what I love about Letterkenny Shopping Centre? I love it because everything I need is under one roof. There's fashion shopping for women and men, health foods and cosmetics, Tesco's and Pennies, free parking and late night shopping Thursday and Friday. I love it because Letterkenny Shopping Centre has it all, including homeware, jewellery, hair and beauty and Revolution Laundry and their free car park. Letterkenny Shopping Centre. So much choice and open 7 days.
Highland Radio time checks with Expressway. Travel Route 32 from Letterkenny to Dublin when you book online and travel for less. Expressway, bringing you the time at...
The time is 18 minutes past 9. We're going to go back to the issue of safety at Maherabeg School in Manor Cunningham. If you're not familiar with it, it is a national school on the side of the road. It wasn't built on the side of the road. The road was built alongside it. We've covered on numerous occasions on this programme about the dangers there. Calls for additional parking, something that needs to be done before a life is lost. So Speedvan is parked close to that school, and now it's causing a controversy, and it is there presumably designed to slow traffic down to keep children safe. As I say, I don't really know what to make of this because the safety of the children is paramount to me, but also I suppose how the rules of the road are enforced has to be fair as well. So the truth lies somewhere in between all of that. Colm's going to help us out here. I hope, Colm. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. I know this is something you've an opinion on. What's your view?
Good morning. No, I travel on that road every day. Just the speed vans parked across from the school and outside a private residence and close to the wall. I have no issue with the drop in the speed limit, 60 kilometres an hour. I believe it should be in place at the school. It's just my concern, the position of the signage warning you off that, the drop on the speed limit, particularly coming from the Newton Cunningham side. You come around a blind corner before you actually see the sign. And the sign's dropping from 100 kilometres, and then you have this beacon flashing at 60 kilometres. By the time cars get slowed down, they're already caught by that radar van, which is like shooting fish in a barrel. But the thing I've noticed, it's on while the school's in place, Greg. Just in the morning when the school opens, they put it on. It's not on all day at the school, really. When they're leaving at the school in the evening, it can be turned on again. And it is there for the safety of the children at the school. It's just coming from, let's say, the Newton Cunningham side. They drop from 100 kilometres to 60 kilometres, especially at rush hour in the morning. There's cars braking, there's cars that are unfamiliar with it. One day I said to Caroline, I seen a lorry, a left-hand drive lorry, actually unfamiliar with the road. He actually crossed the carriageway. Thankfully, there's no oncoming traffic. They avoid colliding cars in front of them. So I think if the council would move the sign back a couple of 100 yards around the corner and put the beacon on there, that people have no excuse. There's a sign at the school, little sign of the two children holding hands. That's actually the side, the Newton Cunningham side of that sign.
But that's it. But at what point is the responsibility of the driver, though? Because you know yourself, Colm, it's not cars. The cars that are slamming the brakes on around that corner aren't the cars that are doing, 90, 95 kilometres. Their cars probably coming around that corner at 120 kilometres per hour. That lorry you talk of, it shouldn't be too hard for a lorry to brake from 80 to 60. So what speed was he doing in the first instance? As you say, drivers knows there's a school there because the sign is on, it's not once you come around the corner, they know it's there, but they keep the foot down and they fly around that corner. And then all of a sudden they're surprised by a flashing sign. At what point do we have to say, well, you know what, if you're driving that fast that you have to slam your brakes on, you're going too fast anyway, and maybe you need a ticket to slow down.
Well, Greg, you're not dropping from 80 kilometres to 60, you're dropping from 100 to 60.
But you're probably dropping from 120 to 60. In the space
of a couple of yards.
Yeah, okay, I get you.
Well, there's people coming along there at 100. They're well aware of the school. They're on the road every day. They know the school's there and the sign's going to be on. But I think the warning sign for people is not, because there's a lot of strange cars and there are a lot of people on. There's a lot of traffic on that road, one of the busiest roads in the county. But I think the situation just to move the sign around the corner, because when you're coming from the other side, the Manor Cunningham side, you're on a big straight road. You can see the sign. You can clearly see the school sign beforehand of the two children. You're given ample opportunity there. You should not be going over the limit. But if you're coming along at 100 kilometres around that road, and there's days that sign's been left on in Coldish, so you come around and it's not in place. It's only in place while the school is school.
Yeah.
But if you come around that corner there and you're coming along 100 kilometres an hour, next you've got this light flashing 60 kilometres an hour, and you're caught once you come around the corner. You've got a boy. You're getting a ticket.
I presume there is a. I presume there is a. I presume there is a distance from the school that you have to locate these signs, or else they lose their importance. Like what I'm trying to get at here is, say you stop this. Say you have that 60 kilometre sign around the corner, right? It does leave it quite some distance then from the school. Are drivers going to obey that speed limit passing the school for such a long period of time in terms of distance travelled?
I would say if you shifted it another 20 yards, which is not going to make that much of a difference. But it's beyond the straight of the road. If you're coming from Newton Cunningham side, you'll actually see the sign, or put a bigger warning sign, speed reduction ahead.
Do you not think
it's given somebody?
Do you not think that when you're coming up to that corner and you see the yellow triangular post with the school, that if you're driving and you're concentrating on what you're doing at that point, that you should not be lifting off the accelerator anyway.
Yeah, but do you want to... Well, I'll send a video to you later. There's where that sign is too. You know, it's on the trees.
Yeah. Oh, listen, come here.
You know, it needs to be...
Listen, I'm not against what you're saying, Colin. I'm just trying to tease it out. Going up Lurgy Brack, there is a 60 kilometres flashing light as well for that school, and it is, for the most part, covered by branches, right? So I do believe that motorists deserve a fair crack of the whip. I'm not contradicting you, Colin. I'm just trying to tease out all the conversation that people might be having in their head listening to us this morning, you know. You're saying bring the sign 20 yards this way. So just the one thing I'm curious about this, Colin, I presume then that they can set these vans that the laser effectively only starts hitting the vehicle or registering the vehicle from the reduced speed limit. Is it because the 100 kilometre speed limit is in the line of sight of that speed van? Is it?
The 100 kilometre, the 60 kilometre sign, you mean? That's the line of sight.
Yeah, but does the van have sight of the road where people might be travelling legally at 100 kilometres per hour?
Well, if you're travelling 100 kilometres an hour, legally you are in that until you hit that sign.
Right, okay.
So that's what I'm saying. If he's catching anybody coming around that corner, they're not doing their job. They're shooting fish in a barrel because legally it's from the actual sign.
Yeah, exactly.
Between them two signs, you have to drive at 60 kilometres an hour.
For sure, but I'm just wondering if they must be able to calibrate the detection not to go as far as where it's legally 100, if that makes sense. But anyway, I'm probably confusing things. Stay where you are, Colin, because Kevin has been a victim of this. Kevin, good morning to you.
Good morning, Greg.
You were clocked by this speed van, were you?
No, I was travelling up on the 21st of April, and I was detected at 8:21 a.m. at going 71 kilometres at that corner.
Yeah.
Now, I came around the corner. There was no flashing lights on at that particular time. I have contacted the council, the Gardaí, and I've been given conflicting information. The RSA website states that we need a 42-metre reaction time in order to slow down safely. I know for a fact that there's no 42 metres between that sign that was not turned on and where that van was positioned, or the detection of my speed, because I have received the GPS locations from the guards in relation to that. It's unfair. It's a money-making strategy. That's exactly what happened there that morning. If I was to break from 100 kilometres to 60 kilometres outside that school coming down that morning, there would have been a pile-up on the road.
Yeah.
It is more dangerous. It is more dangerous to do that than when I slowed down from the 100 to 71. A blind man would see that you were slowing down to be safe.
Now, Kevin, the sign wasn't on at all in your case.
No, it was not on at all in my case.
That's almost separate altogether, isn't it?
When I contacted Donegal County Council, they're responsible for the signs. The RSA are responsible for setting up the speed vans. Now, the speed van was set up there yesterday morning. He pulled up at 16 minutes past 8. I'm sure by the time he does his checks and by the time everything happens, he's not ready to go at 20 past 8 in the morning.
So what do you do now? I mean, if you don't pay up,
if I don't pay up, it's another 240. It's 240 euros plus the court appearance.
But you see, this is the thing, they have us by the, you know what's in that, you know, you really should probably go to court and argue your point. But do you want to roll those dice?
No, I don't want to take that chance and be prosecuted. Then if things don't, but. I can't see how they can. If you look at the distance between the actual sign and where the van is parked, if you break that fast, you're causing a pile-up. You're actually putting the people dropping children off there, which, in fact, there's nobody dropping children off there at 20 past 8 because the principal himself of that school states they do not accept students until 8:40. So, therefore, the bylaws state that those speed restrictions are from 8:20 to 8:50. So there's only 10 minutes really of children being dropped off there where that speed limit should be effective.
But the sign, the key thing here, though, the sign wasn't flashing.
The sign wasn't on.
Your whole argument stands,
I know.
But this is even an extra level, because effectively I would have thought if that sign's not flashing, there is no reduced speed limit, because no one could have knowledge as to when it should be on or not.
Exactly. And the school itself only received a notification of the bylaws on the 13th of March 2023 from Donegal County Council. And, so the school's only recently aware of that speed restriction.
Yeah.
So where do we go with this? I've been on to Donegal County Council at least 6 times in the past 2 days, and I'm getting nowhere with them because they're responsible for that light going on. I've asked for the GPS location on 4 occasions from Donegal County Council of that particular sign. They have failed to produce it to me. I have asked for the electronically logged turning on times of that light as well, to see when that light was turned on that day. Because I was informed that light, the turning on of that sign, is electronically logged.
Mm-hmm.
They're not giving it to me. I had 1 minute past the so-called bylaws. If I worked it out, I need 15.7 seconds to brake correctly from 100 kilometres to 60. And there's 8 seconds. I timed it this morning, 8 seconds from where that sign is to where that speed van was.
What you said, the RSA themselves say motorists need 42 metres to react.
It's on their website.
What would you say the distance actually is to react at this location?
It's 8 seconds.
Right, okay.
It's 8 seconds. And for if you do the maths with this, for you to reduce your speed from 100 kilometres an hour at that corner to 60, you need roughly in between 13 and 15 seconds to do so safely.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
I get you. And especially if you have an Arctic or someone towing a caravan.
I'm only driving an ordinary car,
yeah. Okay,
I'm only driving an ordinary car.
It's a tough one, Kevin, because, maybe the fact that you can't get that information from the local authority at this point is part of your defence. Because, there's no doubt, Kevin, it sounds like you could very clearly articulate your argument in front of a judge. But again, it's you that has to roll those dice, and I probably wouldn't myself either. But
could you put the question out to Donegal County Council?
Of course we will.
Come on.
Hey, Kevin, when we're talking about this, that's all part of the process to get that information from them. That's what we do here. So we've put an inquiry in with the council, and we're going to try and get to the bottom of it, because obviously we want to make sure that everyone attending that school is safe, but you don't do 100%. that. You don't do that by putting other road users in danger either. That's not the best way to solve the problem.
The school itself will not accept students up until 22:09 in the morning. I found that out myself. So why are those lights on at 20? Why are those lights supposed to be on at 8:20, causing a danger? And they come on at 8:20. Apparently, straight away they don't, because I passed it at 8:20 last week. They weren't on.
Right. Okay.
So why is that bylaw in place at that particular region, at that particular area, from 8:20? Number one.
Mm-hmm.
It makes no sense. And another thing I would like to know, is that bylaw just for that particular road, the N13?
Mm-hmm. Okay, and not to mention too that, and I've mentioned this on this programme for many years, these lights continue to operate during Easter holidays, often during summer holidays, not necessarily at that school, but at various locations I've seen it. Kevin, keep us updated. We'll try and get some information. Let us know what you decide to do. Colin, there's Kevin... I think it's really strengthened your point there, because he's been a victim of it, and because he's been able to dig a bit deeper in terms of stopping distance, bylaws, what the RSA suggests. Definitely requires further investigation, Colin. Then.
Yeah, it definitely does. As I say, the safety of the kids and the staff and the parents, even at the school, is paramount, but also all road users using that route. And I say there's nobody arguing the point that there shouldn't be a 60-kilometre speed down at the school, but as I said before, Kevin's told me, I said electronically, it's on days that the school's closed as well. You've mentioned that as well, the fact that, these lights in different locations lit up when schools is closed. The local authority sets the bylaws, and they have to review that bylaw within 2 years, and then within every 5 years. So, putting an appeal out to some of the councillors there too, look at this especially the councils, the elected members on that area. Speak to the likes of the school, because it's obvious the school is concerned as well, because they're just getting duck feeds of information.
Yeah, okay.
But safety of everybody is paramount, and say I have no objections. I don't think anybody's objections with a speed limit being reduced outside the school. It's just the sighting of it and the dangers causing the road users and everybody along that stretch of road.
All right, good points, well made, Colm. Thank you very much for that. And to Kevin as well, as I say, every day's a learning day, and I feel and I'm sure that means all the listeners too have a better understanding of what's going on here too. And it's clear that something needs to be done to ensure that we are providing a safe environment for all road users. Okay, Colm, thank you.
Good morning.
Take care. Good morning to you. And Kevin, thanks for that as well.
Watch the show live now on YouTube, Facebook and at highlandradio.com. The 9 till noon show is brought to you by Letterkenny Credit Union, with monster loans available up to €60,000 for all occasions. Visit letterkennycu.ie.
On this week's Business Matters, I'll be joined by the owner of Oyster Stables at Manor Cunningham, Lisa Wallace, and the head of enterprise at Donegal's local enterprise office, Brenda Haggerty. So join me, Kieran O'Donnell, for Business Matters on Sunday evening after the 6 o'clock news. Business Matters podcast is also available to download at highlandradio.com.
Business Matters in association with the ATU Donegal Faculty of Business. If you're a senior manager in the private sector looking to reinforce your leadership skills, ATU are offering a Level 9 Executive MBS in Leadership and Innovation. Call 9186206 or email donald.hannigan@atu.ie.
If the medical experts get it wrong, everything changes. From misdiagnosis or delayed diagnosis to surgical injury or even poor treatment, all have physical, emotional and financial consequences. We're here to help. So if your treatment didn't go according to plan, speak to our experienced medical negligence team at McElhenney & Associates. Find us online or call 074 917 5989. McElhenney & Associates Solicitors, Stranorlar. In contentious business, a solicitor may not calculate fees or other charges as a percentage or proportion of any award or settlement.
Is the appearance of your staff important to your business? It's the first point of contact for customers when entering your premises. At C&M Embroidery in Letterkenny, they have a huge range of clothing covering all areas of the workplace. It's widely known that customers warm to and trust employees that present themselves well. Have your company name embroidered or printed on all your work uniforms. Contact C&M Embroidery on 07491 28097 and get your staff looking their best.
Right, now we're joined on the programme by journalist Sean McCorrick. We're going to talk about that story we referenced in the papers, that a Garda is to face a criminal investigation. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. A Garda is to face a criminal prosecution over his driving in relation to an incident in which 3 men were killed in a collision on the N7 in Dublin 2 years ago. Sean, thank you very much for taking the call this morning. And what is the background to this case?
Yes, Greg. Some of your listeners might remember it was a case that got a lot of publicity at the time. Back in July of 2021, three men, Dean Maguire, Carl Freeman and Graham Taylor, who were known members of a criminal gang based in the Tallaght area, were killed when their car while they were fleeing from Gardaí, BMW car crashed with a truck and exploded and ignited. All 3 were killed instantly when they were driving down the wrong side of the carriageway between City West and Baldonnell, the turn-off for the aerodrome there in South Dublin. I suppose a lot of people would also have been aware of the case. It garnered a lot of publicity and indeed notoriety a few days later at the funeral of Dean Maguire, when there was, I suppose, at the Requiem Mass in a church in Tallaght, there was what I suppose might be called a celebration of his criminal lifestyle, when some of the offertory gifts brought to the altar were included kind of tools used by burglars, such as a screwdriver and a torch, and there was a lot of, shall we say, colourful language used in some of the eulogies by people in relation to Dean Maguire, and it really did, it was seen by an awful lot of people as, I suppose, just totally unbecoming conduct at a funeral and in a church. And I know the priest at the time said that it was just he'd never seen, he had threatened to hold proceedings if greater respect wasn't shown, and he described it as the most disturbing funeral he had ever overseen. So I think, as I say, arising out of that, because they were being pursued by Gardaí at the time, the case naturally fell to being investigated by the Garda Ombudsman.
And fast forward then to this inquest, and did the news that the DPP had recommended a charge, which we don't know yet, against a guard come as a surprise? Because presumably, you know, the families of the victims were hoping that there would be answers, and now this has been deferred somewhat. So how did events unfold in the coroner's court?
Yeah, so the inquest has come up for repeated brief hearings over the past 2 years, and the family have been pressing all the time for updates on the progress of the GSOC investigation. And there was another hearing there about 2 weeks ago when we learned for the first time that GSOC had submitted their file to the DPP in December, and so that the decision was awaited on whether there would be any prosecution or not. And at the time, GSOC officials had promised that they'd come back to the coroner's court as soon as they were aware of any decision taken by the DPP. And that's happened on Tuesday night. So we learned for the first time, and I suppose it is a surprise development. I certainly know it has caused a certain amount of consternation amongst Gardaí, and judging from some online reaction among the general public as well, that a guard might face a prosecution arising out of, I suppose, literally performing an act performed in the course of their duty. But as I say, we got the details yesterday that, some of the detail there, the notice that Garda is to face prosecution arising out of the circumstances of the three men's death.
Now, you mentioned Dean Maguire, the others that died, Carl Freeman, Graham Taylor. Carl Freeman's father expressed his displeasure with the situation. He wanted the nature of the charge to be made public. He didn't want to subsequently read it in a newspaper. But all that being said, the inquest was adjourned once again.
Yes, and not just the family of Carl Freeman. The other two families were also were represented by solicitors, and they all argued quite strongly that there was no legal prohibition why GSOC should not disclose the actual specific offence that this Garda is to face. They obviously weren't seeking the name of the Garda involved, but the nature of the offence. And under a lot of questioning, the GSOC official who did not want to reveal the specific offence on the basis that the Garda in question had not been formally notified of it yet, but he did reveal, as I say, under questioning, that it did relate to the Garda's driving on the night in question.
Yeah, and finally, Sean, there's quite a process to go through here, so maybe we can't even speculate as to the consequences of this, but I presume the likes of the Garda Representative Association and even maybe active Gardaí who might find themselves in something of a similar situation currently will be watching on with great interest along with the general public to see what kind of a precedent this sets or even how to react to it, because I presume they can't really react to it until we know the nature of the charge and what the consequences of that might be.
Absolutely, Greg. I sense that, as I say, from just one or two calls last night, I sense there is a deep unease amongst Gardaí and maybe the Garda Representative Association about the precedent that's set and whether it places a question mark over what Gardaí in terms of pursuing criminals. And as I say, in the case of these three men, they were well-known criminals, so there was a good reason to be probably stop and questioning them. I do know that there are a lot of protocols around the use of blue lights by Gardaí that they need to follow. One of the issues that may arise in this case, and it is an element of speculation, but I know there are rules about when a car fleeing from Gardaí goes down the wrong side of a carriageway or a motorway. There was another inquest recently where a similar situation arose, and in such circumstances, Gardaí normally pull back just because of the whole public safety issue that would surround a car going the wrong way down a motorway. Whether that arose in this case or not, I suspect will emerge in the fullness of time. It might be a separate issue, but it is one area that possibly arises in the case, because we do know for certain that the vehicle driven by the three men went down the wrong side of the N7 and went into a fireball after it crashed with a truck, killing the three men instantly to such a degree that their bodies had to be identified by DNA samples.
Okay, Sean, thanks for your time this morning. I really do appreciate it. That is journalist Sean McCarrick there outlining the details of that case, which a lot of people will be watching with great interest.
The 9 till noon show with Letterkenny Credit Union. Simplify your debts with a debt consolidation loan from Letterkenny Credit Union. Call us on 074 910 2126 or apply online via our app or in office today.
On this week's Business Matters, I'll be joined by the owner of Oyster Stables at Cunningham, Lisa Wallace, and the head of enterprise at Donegal's local enterprise office, Brenda Haggerty. So join me, Kieran O'Donnell, for Business Matters on Sunday evening after the 6 o'clock news. Business Matters podcast is also available to download at highlandradio.com.
Business Matters in association with the ATU Donegal Faculty of Business. If you're a senior manager in the private sector looking to reinforce your leadership skills, ATU are offering a Level 9 Executive MBS in Leadership and Innovation. Call 9186206 or email donald.hannigan@atu.ie.
Ready for a change or upgrade? Think Seat. With our wide range of award-winning Seat SUV, including the bold crossover Arona, the family favourite Ateca, or the spacious 7-seater Tarraco. All vehicles come with great offers on finance and PCP options. Book a test drive today by calling DMG Motors on 074 9721 396 or visit dmgmotors.ie. Choose your new 231 Seat with confidence with a visit to DMG Motors, Clare Road, Donegal Town.
Are you tired of the daily grind of commuting to work? Long for the flexibility and freedom of remote working? Then G-Tech Digital Hub, Termon and Carrickart may be the perfect solution. Join G-Tech Digital Hub today and start living and working on your own terms. Find us on Facebook.
Now, dyslexic students in junior cycle and leaving cert should be given more time to complete their state exams. Despite accommodations during class time, those with the condition are not given any additional time during exams. The Dyslexia Association says it puts them at a distinct disadvantage. Donald Ewing is Head of Education and Policy at the Dyslexia Association of Ireland and joins us on the programme now. Welcome back to the show. Donald, thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Greg.
Right, this is not just a solo, although you've got the mandate to do it, by the Dyslexia Association of Ireland. A lot of people have signed a petition backing this call.
Yes, in the first 24 hours we had 7,000 signatures. I think the total at the moment is well over 12,000. So there's a great groundswell of support for this accommodation, which is long overdue, really.
To help us understand, why might a student with dyslexia require more time than a child with that doesn't have it?
So if you have dyslexia, you would have difficulties with extended reading and extended writing, and also processing information. So in a pressured environment, which brings additional challenges, individuals with dyslexia often struggle to demonstrate their understanding under those conditions. And in other jurisdictions and at third level, we have what is seen as a reasonable accommodation to give them a small amount of additional time so they can demonstrate understanding and work to their potential.
So logically then, if that's how you're taught, that should be how you're tested then. I mean, it's pretty simple, isn't it?
Yes, the State Exam Commission's guidance around this does talk about trying to mirror the normal way of working. It uses that phrase in their guidance. What we need is to see an enhancement to that scheme to reflect the additional time that students with dyslexia work under. And again, it is available in other countries. If we look to our neighbours, the UK offers 25% extra time, Italy 30%, France 33%. It's available at all colleges and universities in Ireland, and also with high-stakes professional exams, extra time is the norm. The outlier is really the second-level examinations here.
In not being accommodated, is there not an argument that this is discrimination on the grounds of, on one of the grounds that this might fall under?
Yes, well, under equalities legislation, the kind of legal test really is the body concerned offering reasonable accommodations? And often the kind of flip to that is it unreasonable to entertain this whatsoever? So we would say it does potentially, but certainly it seems like a reasonable accommodation. It's successfully implemented elsewhere, and it could be felt to be discriminatory for a person who has an identified need and indeed legally has an identified disability under the law.
I suspect, Donald, that this is not necessarily something the powers that be are against doing, but it's too complicated. So what we'll do is just not do it. Too complicated to try and accommodate a perhaps 1 in 10 or a cohort of students in a different way. You know what I'm on about? I would say it's not the will. I'd say it's the way. And we're just probably, any other conversation is nonsense because it probably just comes down to that.
Yeah, I don't think too complicated is a good defence under equalities legislation.
No, I know, but that's why that would never be said. So we'll talk about everything else except the fact that they don't know how to administer it.
Well, there was an expert advisory group that the State Exam Commission have referenced today in the national press, and they suggested it was quite tricky to implement this. Curiously, that group met 25 years ago. So I think we can probably look at that again. It's a reasonable amount of time has passed. This was a view that was taken in the last millennium. Also, I think if we look at other jurisdictions and look at other settings here in Ireland, how they do it reasonably, safely, with sort of appropriate checks and balances, I think it is very much something that can be achieved without too much difficulty.
I think for most young people, the most stressful time of their lives is exams. And I think as we get older, then we realise how perhaps not important it is as we first thought. But you have to put yourself in a young person's shoes. It seems to be the be-all and end-all. So any extra challenges or any extra pressure against any group of young people, it's unfair. It's putting them and their families through great distress.
Yes, I mean, the state examination terminal exams are very stressful for all of us. I do wonder if we might look back at how we do this in maybe 10, 15 years and say, why did we continue to do that for so long? If you listen to yourself and colleagues in the next month or so, we'll regularly hear people talking about small t trauma in exams, and often those are people that did quite well in their exams. If you think about the recurring nightmares that many people have, what's top of the list? Walking into an exam hall. If we throw in the additional challenges of dyslexia into that, I think we should make every reasonable attempt to try to alleviate some of the pressures that arise as part of a disability.
Yeah, and as you probably know, Donald, but much better than I, that nightmare of walking in, but it's also the weeks and months in advance, isn't it, that will probably hinder people's ability to learn what they need to learn as well.
Yes, indeed. And I think there's some evidence from other countries that where extra time is offered, it's not always all used, but having that assurance that you won't be under the same time pressure as everybody else. And it's worth remembering, some people say, well, equality is treating everyone the same. That's a misunderstanding about equality. Equality is giving people what they reasonably need. Now, I wear glasses here for short-sightedness. It's a reasonable accommodation. It's my normal way of working. No one's going to deprive me of that on an exam day. And I know I'll be afforded this accommodation. It's a crude analogy, but actually, if you think about it, the types of supports that children with dyslexia need, they need to be assured about that. They need to be given what they need, and they need to be given it so that they can succeed and show off their potential. Because, as you say, later in life, perhaps we have a slightly more sanguine approach to exam.
And I think the fact that during the learning process, extra time is given. It seems very unfair then that's not followed through down to exam time. A caller says, even though my son has dyslexia, he doesn't get an automatic waiver to spell check. You have to be assessed before the exam again, which they believe is very unfair. It was stressful enough the first time round labelling him. Now we have to do it again before his junior cert. Is that something you hear from parents a lot?
Yes, indeed. And we're actually meeting with colleagues from the State Exam Commission at the end of the month, and we're really looking forward to positive engagement with them. Extra time is only one of the things on our agenda. The way that we assess young people for the other types of accommodations that are currently available is not ideal in many ways also. So we need to try and improve how we have. There have been some improvement over the last decade, but we certainly can improve how we are the types of accommodations. In particularly, some of the technological accommodations that we're using on our devices and laptops on a regular daily basis as our normal way of working, some of those text-to-speech and speech-to-text functions are not afforded to children in exams, or the ones that they're used to using are not afforded to them at all in exams. So again, there's a few things on the agenda for that meeting.
Yeah, I think it's very much in the state's interest that everybody achieves their maximum potential. We don't want to lose great brains for no good reason at all, do we? We end up, you know what I mean? So it's very much in the state's interest to look at this. The petition, over 10,000 have signed it already. Is it still open at Dyslexia Association of Ireland's website?
Absolutely, on our website and also through our social media, you can find a link to that. I think we're at 12,500 as we speak.
Great,
so it's a very impressive response from our members and people who are not directly affected, but feel that it's a fair approach to take.
That's a really significant number of people to be motivated to do this. I think so. When you think of the cohort of students and then break it down, it's a real strong representation. Thanks very much indeed for your time this morning. Donald Ewing, Head of Education and Policy at the Dyslexia Association of Ireland, 08660 25,000 if you wish to get involved in that conversation. Greg, Ballybofey is a gridlock with traffic due to the roadworks this morning. Make people aware in case they need to leave extra time. And I think for the next 5 or 6 weeks, that is going to be the case. There's no other real way around it with the level of work that they're doing, that one lane has to be shut down at the moment. And at the moment, outside of the peak times, the system works kind of well, but of course there's a huge bottleneck at certain times there. Greg, you can't cut hedges at this time of the year in case you disturb birds' nests. Many chicks have just hatched at this time, of course. And it was a jokey throwaway remark to Lee just at the top of the show. I don't have any hedges, and my word, if he hasn't done those hedges yet at this point, he might as well leave them next year, and he certainly must have to. There's a speed van in Glenties Main Street at least once a week outside the old Limelight nightclub. I thought these speed vans were meant to be in black spots where collisions have happened or high-risk areas. To my knowledge, there shouldn't be one on the main street. It's tax collection, plain and simple. That comes in from Charlie in Glenties, and this one also pulls in opposite the church or chapel in Donegal Town, and it is... If you're looking to do people, it's a cracker of a spot because you come around a corner on both ends, a sweeping corner, and I would say they clean up there. I genuinely would believe that they do. Right, okay. Just time for a quick one with Roisin. Roisin, good morning to you.
Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good, thanks, Roisin. And just give us all the details of the Redress Focus Groups meeting just before 10, if you don't mind, Roisin.
No problem, Greg. So the meeting is on tonight at 7 p.m. in on Green Inn Hotel in Burt. And we'd really love to encourage all people to come along, whether they volunteer with the initiative or not. We'd love people to come along and feel supported and hear the updates from all the focus groups. And if you want to volunteer, of course, come ahead. We really do need a lot more volunteers to come on board and help us throughout all the 15 groups. But essentially, this is a support meeting, and that's what initially we wanted to start, and it grew and grew. So it's going great, and I know you've heard some updates from the banking and insurance focus group this week, and there'll be a lot more on that. So yeah, 7 o'clock and on Greenan this evening.
Okay, and we're due a longer chat, Roisin, where we can see where we're making progress in these various elements of this campaign. But for now, tonight, support an update meeting at a Green On Hotel at 7 p.m. As Roisin said, it's about support and getting together and getting updates and what have you, but also you might want to get involved in one of the strands of the campaign. There are 15 groups, and the more people involved, the less pressure on particular individuals there is. Okay, Roisin, hopefully there's a great turnout this evening. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Greg.
Take care of yourself. Bye-bye. Okay, we'll be back with more after the news and obituary notices.
The 9 till noon show is brought to you by Letterkenny Credit Union. Digital loans now available. Apply online or via our app today and get your loan transferred directly to your current account.
New this week at Home Store and More. All Hotel Collection duvet sets are all half price. There's the double stitch 500 thread count double duvet set at $49.99 and the Enniskerry Jacquard Champagne double duvet set at $34.99 and the Stars 400 thread count double duvet set at $49.99. But better hurry, because when all the half price Hotel Collection duvet sets are gone, they're gone. Shop in store or online. Home Store and More. A happy home. New store now open in Arcadia Retail Park, Athlone.
Add a bit of sunshine to your home with Easy Living Furniture's garden furniture sale. With stunning dining sets, cracking egg chairs and relaxing sun loungers that are in stock and ready for delivery. There really is something for everyone. And with discounts of up to 25% off sale prices, now really is the time to let your garden shine. Garden sale now on. Visit Easy Living Furniture, Crescent Link Retail Park.
With July only around the corner, we would like to invite you to iMotors 232 sales event on the 19th, 20th and 21st of May in Letterkenny, with special offers available across the weekend. Call up and test drive any of our Kia range and find out why Kia is Donegal's best-selling brand. Live broadcast with Highland Radio on Friday, free pizzas all day Saturday and refreshments available all weekend. Check out our full range at imotors.ie.
Live, on air, online and on the Highland Radio app. This is Highland Radio News.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock. Donald Kavanagh at the news desk. A Donegal deputy says there needs to be an increase in development in rural towns and villages. Speaking during a motion on planning and rural housing in the Dáil, Deputy Thomas Pringle said the current housing crisis is being exacerbated by the current planning system. He says a review of policy is vital if rural areas are to develop properly.
Significantly increase development of our rural towns, and not just our bigger towns but our smaller villages too. If we are serious about repopulating our rural areas, then this type of development needs to be prioritised. It is not enough to develop areas such as Donegal Town and Glenties, although development here is critically needed too, but we need to be looking at further developing villages such as Teelan, Carrick and Glenconkill. We need proper policy that prioritises the development of rural areas, and I support the call for this in this motion.
More than 2 in 5 older renters believe they'll be renting for the rest of their lives, as they don't believe there are any other options available to them. A new report from Threshold and Alone shows a similar number have experienced high levels of stress from renting in the private rental sector. 17% of interviewees said their landlord was reluctant to accept housing assistance payments and, in some cases, refused to. Sinn Féin's housing spokesperson Ona Bryn says the government needs to urgently build smaller, affordable homes to support older renters.
We need an emergency response from government to dramatically increase, using emergency planning and procurement powers and new building technologies, a supply of homes, particularly one-bed bungalows and dormer bungalows, to get people out of emergency or prevent them going in for emergency. But the most important thing then is for government to accept their social and affordable housing targets are too low, are not being met and don't meet the needs of our ageing population.
The Micah Action Group has published 13 amendments to the draft defective concrete block regulations following a consultation. The amendments cover 6 separate regulations and 3 schedules. It follows a virtual meeting between the group and Housing Minister Darragh O'Brien yesterday. They were briefed on the revised scheme. The scheme and its regulations are expected to be published in the coming weeks. You can read those amendments in full on our website, highlandradio.com. Meanwhile, the Dáil has heard calls for penalty-free downsizing to be included in the enhanced redress scheme for defective block homeowners. Donegal Deputy Joe McHugh says allowing homeowners to downsize as part of the scheme will be beneficial on all sides.
Penalty-free downsizing, which should be voluntary, is an important element, and I think both environmentally and also financially, penalty-free downsizing is an important issue that should be part of the new scheme, and it will make the scheme that much stronger.
Glenties Municipal District has been told there is a cluster of houses between Dunlow and Doohery where a group water scheme was promised several years ago, but nothing's been done. Councillor Mary Therese Gallagher told an MD meeting this week that the water getting into the homes at present is so bad it can barely be used for animals. She said people are having to buy bottled water for cooking and drinking. She told colleagues that it's unacceptable that in 2023 there are children aged 11 and 12 who have never drunk a glass of water from the tap in their home.
It's unthinkable that this is happening in 2023. You know, people literally do not have water to wash themselves, clean their clothes. You wouldn't wash your hands in it. You wouldn't use it. Like, the filtration systems aren't lasting a week in the houses. So this is an emergency. It has been an emergency, and the people at this stage are being failed.
Meanwhile, much needed water rehabilitation works are set to be carried out in the Finn Valley this year. The area has been plagued with a range of issues affecting water supplies from Lochmorn, with residents frequently left without water. The Cathaoirleach of the Lifford-Stranorlar Municipal District, Councillor Patrick McGowan, says the works will significantly improve the everyday lives and needs of people.
An upgrading pipes now from the reservoir down at the Castle Fan, and also from the main roads from Scully down at the Castle Fan, plus a couple of other jobs in Dungankeene and about Lifford and that. So this is all going to do, because we're losing water at an alarming rate in the summertime. In the winter time we're told to turn off the water because of frost and bus, and then the summertime we're turned off again, and then this is issues with livestock and animals and everything, because we're a big farming area.
Weather forecast, mostly cloudy at first with fairly widespread showers. Some of those showers heavy. They'll tend to become mainly confined to southern parts of the region this afternoon, with some sunshine developing. Top temperatures 13 to 15 degrees Celsius, with winds becoming northerly, mostly moderate, but fresh and gusty for a time in the northwest, particularly around coastal areas. And that's Highland Radio News. We're back with news headlines again at 11 o'clock. Until then, from the news team, have a very good morning.
The obituary notices this Thursday morning, May 11th. The death has taken place of Kathleen Katie McGee, nee Sweeney, Legland, Drumkeen. Her remains will repose at her son's Charles home, Lettermore, Drumkeen, from 4 p.m. this evening. Funeral leaving there on Saturday at 12:30 p.m. for 1 p.m. Requiem Mass in St Patrick's Church, Drumkeen, followed by burial in the family plot in the adjoining graveyard. Family flowers only, please. Donations in lieu if desired to the Oncology Unit, Letterkenny University Hospital, care of Terence McClintock, Funeral Director. The death has taken place of Jared Glacken, Bree, Malin Head. His remains are reposing at his late home. Removal from there on Saturday at 1:30 p.m, going to St Mary's Church, Lag, Malin, for Requiem Mass at 2 p.m, with interment afterwards in the adjoining cemetery. House open to all from 2 p.m. until 10 p.m. each day. No flowers, please. Donations if desired to Diabetic Ireland Care of any family member. The death has taken place of Catherine Sheridan, nee McFadden, Ballybowes, Creasla, reposing at her home. Rosary is at 9 p.m. each evening. Funeral Mass in St Michael's Church, Creasla, tomorrow at 11 a.m. Burial afterwards in Doe Cemetery. Mass can be viewed on mcnmedia.tv. Family time, please, on the morning of the funeral. Family flowers only, donations in lieu to the Pioneer Association, care of any family member, or James Harkin, Funeral Director. The death has occurred of Bridget Mulhern, nee Paddon, Dr McGinley Road, Glencar, Letterkenny, and formerly of Achill Island, Mayo. Bridget will be reposing at the Eternal Light Chapel of Rest, Mountain Top, Letterkenny, today from 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. Funeral leaving from Letterkenny at 12 o'clock tomorrow morning, going to Doega, Achill, County Mayo, to repose overnight. Requiem Mass on Saturday morning in Church of Our Lady and All Saints, Doega, Achill, County Mayo, with burial afterwards in the cemetery. The death has occurred of Margaret Harley, nee Boyle, Chestnut Grove, Beaufort Place, Navan, Meath, formerly of Glenswilly, County Donegal. Reposing at St Joseph's Chapel of Rest, Old Johnstown, Navan, tomorrow evening from 5 p.m. until 6:30 p.m. Arriving to St Oliver's Church, Black Castle, Navan, on Saturday afternoon for funeral mass at 3 p.m. Burial afterwards in St Finian's Cemetery, Old Athboy Road, Navan. The death has taken place of Margaret O'Donnell, Curran, Terman. Remains are reposing at her home. Funeral Mass tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. in St Columba's Church, Terman. Burial afterwards in the adjoining cemetery. Funeral Mass can be viewed on churchservices.tv. Family time from 11 p.m. and before the funeral tomorrow morning. The death has taken place of John Baxter, Drimnacarry, Creasla. Funeral Mass at St Michael's Church, Creasla, where remains are reposing, this morning at 11 a.m, followed by burial in Doe Graveyard. Mass can be viewed on mcnmedia.tv. Family flowers only, donations if desired to the Lake House Comfort Fund, care of any family member, or James Harkin, funeral director. The death has taken place of Teresa McGaughey, late of Holmlea Park, Dungiven. Remains reposing at her former childhood residence, 56 Monador Road, Altonmuir Park, County Derry. Family time please before the funeral this morning. Funeral this morning leaving at 10:20 a.m. for 11 a.m. Requiem Mass at St Mary's, Altonmuir. Interment immediately afterwards in the adjoining cemetery. Family flowers only please, donations if desired in lieu to St Vincent de Paul Society, care of McLaughlin Funeral Directors. For more details, including any family health guidelines for wakes and funerals, please go to highlandradio.com.
$9.99 at another supermarket gets you a 46-pack of Pampers size 2 nappies. At Aldi, only $6.81 gets you a larger 60-pack of award-winning Mamia Premium size 2 nappies, plus nappy cream, baby wipes, nappy sacks, and baby lotion, with $3.18 left over. All from Aldi, Ireland's #1 own label nappy supermarket. You won't just like more value, you'll love it. Tesco price checked on tesco.ie 27/4/23. Tesco may sell equivalent own brand products at lower prices. Details at aldi.ie/swap. Exclusive offers, products and prices may vary.
All right, welcome back to the 9 till noon show here on Highland Radio. Good morning, of course, as well, if you've just joined us. Now, getting to some of your comments coming in so far this morning on a range of issues. Following recent reports of what's in our mortgage contracts, Micah home owners, I'm horrified to read in my terms and conditions that damage caused by the defective blocks causes a default demand event on my mortgage contract. How have government and banks failed to address this? Why has government failed to make banks contribute to the redress scheme? That's the million-dollar question. It's a shame that stressed homeowners have to drive this initiative. Wouldn't you think banks would have held information nights to support Micah homeowners long ago? Maybe they're keeping low profile as they know the scheme won't fully fix houses, or they sit back and watch their assets be returned to full value either. They probably can't lose. Greg, on top of that assessment for dyslexia during exams, my son also had a separate assessment to see if he gets a reader. It's very unfair. No one would ask a child with a physical disability to be assessed every time he does something. Dyslexia may improve, but only slightly. It doesn't go away, they say. Another, I have dyslexia and did my Leaving Cert exam. I was isolated into a room and had an examiner watching over me, which I appreciate. They were trying to facilitate me. However, it was the worst experience of my life. I felt as though more pressures were added, they say. They need to chat to people with dyslexia and ask them how they'd like the exams to go. Indeed, that would make an awful lot of sense. A caller says, time to forget the Eurovision. It's madness, flogging a dead horse. Yeah, I can see why some people might feel that. Hi, Greg. Could you wish Mary Ford a very happy birthday from all the staff at DPD? Happy to do that. And we'll take a break for the obituary. That's 2 days in a row. It's for the bingo numbers, of course. We'll take a break for the bingo numbers and then we'll be right back. With Dr. Marie Hainsworth, who'll be joining us. She's manager of the Donegal Domestic Violence Services, to talk about a couple of high-profile cases that I'd imagine are really quite triggering for people. So we'll speak to her to see what best advice we can deliver to the public.
The county's #1 talk show, the 9 till noon show on Highland Radio.
It's time for NCBI Bingo on Highland Radio.
It's Thursday, the 11th of May, Jackpot Day. You're playing for the jackpot prize of €17,000 on the pink sheet. The reference number is S14. It's game number 19. The jackpot number is 87. This number can come out in any position from the next 10 numbers drawn. And now, here are your daily numbers. 26, 8, 54, 40, 76, 38, 2, 49, 61, and finally 58. Phone your claim to 9104833 before 8 tonight, leaving your name, contact number and the name of the shop where you purchased your book, and we'll call you back the next working day. Get all your NCBI bingo information at highlandradio.com.
The groom goes free. The groom goes free. Yes, you heard it. The Groom's Room. Evolve Clothing, Letterkenny Retail Park. The groom goes free. Call in today. Terms and conditions apply.
A public interest message from Donegal County Council. Donegal County Council are carrying out septic tank inspections across the county and would like to remind homeowners to check the condition of their wastewater treatment systems for signs of sewage overflows, blockages, pools of effluent on lawns or in nearby ditches and streams. Direct all soiled water from sinks, showers, dishwashers and washing machines to the septic tank, but not rainwater. If it hasn't been emptied for the last few years, please get it cleaned out by a permitted contractor who will dispose of it properly. Further details on how to protect your health and environment are on our website, donegalcoco.ie. Donegal County Council, protecting the environment.
The 9 till noon show with Letterkenny Credit Union, now offering mortgages from €40,000 to €600,000 with no hidden fees or transaction charges. Letterkenny Credit Union, 9102127.
Now, the next conversation is going to be about issues connected about domestic abuse and issues connected to it as well, just so you are aware before we begin. And I would say most of you are aware, if you're on social media, that the wife of a prominent Irish sports person has told of how she has been the victim of serious domestic violence for more than 2 decades. The woman said she was subjected to numerous vicious attacks by the sportsman over the past 24 years, including being beaten into an inch, within an inch of her, or into an inch of her life, to quote her almost directly, strangled, bitten on the face and dragged by the hair along the street. Now, there's been much talk about this on social media. We are broadcast media and we are subject to much more stringent guidelines in terms of what we can say and what we can't say. And that goes further. Often you will see posts or videos that appear on social media that we simply can't cover because we'd have to infer something or draw a conclusion, and that has to be substantiated and so on and so forth. So it's not that these stories are not talked about, it's just we are very much restrained in what we can say at certain times. That's the broadcast media. Social media, it seems to be a free-for-all. But Dr. Marie Hainsworth, manager of Donegal Domestic Violence Services, joins us on the programme. And I'm sure you, like the many, many thousands of others, read the testimony of this lady, and it is incredibly harrowing and worrying and just an incredibly difficult read. That doesn't talk to what it must have been like to go through it, Marie.
It is difficult, and unfortunately, these are not incidences in isolation. I think most victims of domestic abuse don't put their story out there on social media. So sometimes, particularly when it's quite a prominent person, the stories get read a lot more. There's a lot more distribution of the situation. The case was particularly extreme and over a long period of time. So, I think, first of all, it's important to say that, I think sometimes the cases can be so extreme that people almost shut off from it because they can't take it on board. And it is important that we continue having conversations around domestic abuse, even though sometimes the details are difficult. And also to remember that a lot of victims, like we try and work with victims before it gets to that extent. So we're trying to encourage people to come forward. And I know, and I do appreciate that 20 years ago, the response would have been very different probably than what you'll get today. But we are encouraging that people do not stay in relationships that length of time and try and access support. So I do appreciate they weren't probably available at that particular time. But it's not the only story in the media, Greg, as you're probably aware. There's been a number, in terms of court reports of different situations and other aspects of domestic abuse which don't often get reported, such as the use of children within domestic violence settings, and how sometimes when the victim has actually moved on, the perpetrator will then turn their attention to, say, a substitute almost. And in that case, then the children can become the targets of domestic abuse. And unfortunately, the case was actually in Donegal, where a perpetrator of domestic abuse then abandoned a small child on the side of the road, and that was covered through the media there. So there are two elements here that are coming through in the media, and people might not think that they're connected, but actually they are all part of that spectrum of domestic abuse. And, looking at the kind of the risk that imposes on victims, I think, these are conversations we do need to have, however difficult they are.
Now, obviously, in terms of the severity or the actual actions that are taking place, they're going to vary case by case. But I would imagine there are victims of domestic abuse out there who are still trapped in that situation that will read through some of the key points. In other words, when it began, a decision maybe to stay in a relationship for what seemed like the right reasons at the time, how things progressed, the difficulty then in raising in getting out of that situation, and then often the consequences that can come along, both personally and in your life around you from doing so. And I would say, as constructive as it is to have these conversations out in public, for some people at certain stages of their life, this is going to be very difficult for them to read. Have you any words for people that have found this, that it's brought their own situation really to the fore in their minds?
Yeah, I would say I would encourage you to talk. When I'm talking about general conversations, I think there's two different levels here. One is I think it's important the public are talking about it all the time, because then there is an acceptance, and people are, when you're not in an abusive relationship, that's the time to kind of read up on domestic abuse and read up about, what the different signs are. When you're in the middle of it, it can be very traumatic, and you're not necessarily in a place where you can understand what's happening. So to have a support network around you of people who've done that work and who are aware of things and know where the contacts are and know who to speak to, that's the ideal situation that you want in terms of supporting victims, because most victims will talk to somebody they know and trust before they will contact anybody. And then certainly in terms of public figures, the first person they're likely to talk to is a GP. So that's the kind of avenue that you're looking at in terms of where referrals come in. It gets a bit more extreme when your first person you're talking to is a guard and it's a call out and it's emergency, because then you're throwing people into a situation and they're not really in a place to make decisions or be able to hear what people are saying to them. So it becomes very difficult dealing with very traumatized people and getting them to kind of think through situations. So that's what I'm talking about with general conversations and why people need to have them outside of the, where we're reacting to major events or we're, getting very emotional about the stories we're reading. We do need to have a calm space where we can have these conversations.
Some of these cases which we've come across in recent times kind of hold a mirror up to organisations and society as a whole as to how this is all viewed to some extent.
Yeah, and I think, with agencies, they have a different responsibility because, and I keep going on about this, I suppose, around risk assessment and the need to review risk assessment and the fact that once victims leave, I've heard a lot of our clients say, oh, well, he is a good dad. We don't have any worries about the kids going there. But the reality is he was a good dad when the victim was present, or the perpetrator was a good parent when the victim was present. When the victim's not there and they can't get access to the victim, then suddenly they are looking for another victim, or they're looking for a way to harm the victim through a third party. So, risk assessment needs to be redone at that point. Social work can't assume, or anybody really, family can't assume that what happened before the separation is what's going to happen afterwards. Children do become the targets. and do become pawns in that picture. Even without domestic abuse, you'll often see that in terms of divorce and separation, but so you can imagine how much more it is when there's actually a desire by a perpetrator to control everything that's happening. So risk assessment is a big thing that agencies need to be looking at, and reassessment, an ongoing assessment, so that we don't get some of the scenarios that we've had, certainly in the UK, where, children have been killed on access, and victims have been killed because agencies didn't get enough information or didn't share the right kind of information. And we are getting to learn more about that through the domestic homicide reviews, but we're still not good at piecing together all the bits of information and sharing it across different agencies. And these cases now are getting so complicated, not one agency on its own can manage this. We need to work together more.
Yeah, what's we kind of touched on it, but what is your message to someone listening to this, maybe who's been reading some of the coverage of the two cases that you talk of, and they are in an abusive relationship? It could be emotional abuse, coercive control. It could be a physically abusive relationship. They're just waiting for the next, big football match because they know what's coming next, sort of a thing. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, that's perhaps a sad reality of someone's life. What speak to them? What is your advice to them? What should they do first?
Well, talk to people, as I say, talk to ourselves as a service and just run by the scenario. We're not looking for extreme cases necessarily, but I think one of the things that was mentioned in the social media post there that people might have missed is she did reference that you assume abusers will change, but they never do. And the reality is, without some kind of an intervention, no, their behaviour is not going to change. They don't have any reason to change. So sitting back and hoping that the situation will change and become better is unlikely to happen. And the other common myth I think that people have is that the children were not present, as in they weren't in the room when something happened, and so therefore it doesn't have an impact on them. And, we know from talking to children who've lived through domestic abuse, they absolutely hear everything and they understand everything, and they pick up on the dynamics, they pick up on the tensions, and they pick up on the fear. So whatever you're experiencing as an adult victim, you can be guaranteed that the children are experiencing their own version of that and are being affected. So the longer you stay in that situation, the greater the impact it has, and also the greater the opportunity you're giving the perpetrator to isolate you, to cut you off from supports, and to even meet some of those supports like family and give them a story and a version of events that will make it harder for you to be able to disclose what's happening. So don't delay, let's start the move, do it safely, choose a time when you're on your own, pick up the helpline, talk to somebody. There's going to be no pressure from us that you have to leave a relationship. We can certainly support you through it.
And I suppose there is going to be a right time, but it might feel that there's never going to be a right time. But obviously the right time, a person is probably going to have to exit that scenario at some point, or God forbid something very serious might happen. If you can face it early, before there is extreme violence or a child is put at risk, because as I say, it's probably a journey someone is going to have to go through at some point in any case.
It is, and unfortunately there's not necessarily going to be an easy way around it, and I think people do kind of hold back hoping that things will change, and that's unlikely to happen. So yeah, embrace it as soon as you realize you don't deserve to be treated like this. Nobody does, and your children certainly don't deserve to be treated. But even if there aren't children there, you as an adult don't deserve to be treated that way. So there doesn't have to be children involved. We work with what we would call families anyway, regardless of the situation. So don't wait and don't assume it'll just resolve itself, because it won't.
How important is it, the public response to cases? I'm not talking about any specific cases, but obviously you have people that will express their sympathy. You'll have others that say nothing, but then there is a group of people that will victim blame. That seems to be their default position, without maybe thinking of how. I don't need to extend it beyond that, just to say that there does seem to be quite a large group of people that are the first thing they want to do is victim blame.
And I think it's important to understand that victim blaming is probably a defence mechanism, because what it does is it puts a bit of distance between saying that couldn't happen to me, it happened to them because. Because if you don't do that, the other thing you have to face up to is, well, it could happen to me or it could happen to somebody I know. So it is about understanding. That's why I'm saying we kind of need to have conversations in calm environments where we're not reacting to things, where we can actually process things and look at it a bit more kind of objectively. And the other thing is, so not to get tied into those discussions or arguments. If that's where the person's at, they're not going to be able to hear you.
You're not going to change their mind,
Yeah, but the main thing the public can do is to keep this issue live so that, like the Department of Justice that has that responsibility to fund and protect victims and protect the services that support victims, that they keep this live as an issue that they need to be supporting. Because it's very easy, in terms of government, things can fall off the agenda, other things take priority. We just need to make sure that doesn't happen.
Not exclusively, but for the most part, domestic violence, maybe even particularly physical domestic violence, is perpetrated by men. And maybe there's some awareness amongst the general male population that this is going on. It could be language in WhatsApp groups, or it could just be knowing something has happened but saying nothing. Is it important that it's called out, or what role do men as a whole do you think have in relation to calling out that kind of toxicity, that type of behaviour? Is it significant, or would it make any difference?
No, I think it is significant, and a lot of men are parents, and you're going to come to situations where your child's wanted to play with another child who might well be in a domestic abuse situation, So if you're always going to be faced with this issue, even if it's not in your own relationship. You're going to have family members, you're going to, some people will have been grown up in this environment. So I think it is important that, men probably hear it better from men, that you can challenge and say, you don't need to be abusive to make a relationship work. Your relationship with your child should be parented properly. That there's all sorts of things that dads do to support other dads that can be done, and challenge and abuse within that is one of those things. That there's, I think sometimes in the past, in terms of fathers' rights, there has been this kind of lump all men together as fathers. But actually, I think it's important to differentiate. There are good dads and then there are abusive perpetrators. And there needs to be a separation of that, because children do deserve access to both parents. They don't deserve to be made unsafe and have access to perpetrators if that's what they don't want, So it's about trying to break down that these things go beyond gender and beyond stereotypes. Now we are specifically focusing on abusive parents towards children, that we're challenging that behaviour and not afraid to do it publicly. I think in the past we wouldn't have challenged what we saw happening in a supermarket or on the street, but it doesn't have to be violent, but I think there is a need to take more interest in what's happening around us.
If an accusation was made against me along these lines and I was part of an organisation or an institution, do you have a view as to how best that institution or organisation might deal with me?
There are lots now of workplace policies coming in around domestic abuse.
But I'm on about in terms of instant reaction. But should I be left in my position? Should I be suspended from my position with a presumption of innocence until such time as the situation becomes more clear? I mean, is there an appropriate response from an organisation to deal with someone like me if those accusations were made against me?
And it does depend on the situation, because some organisations you might have both the victim and the perpetrator working in the same organisation. So obviously in that situation, you're going to have to be a lot more proactive than if you're just working with one or the other. We've certainly done a lot of work with employees or employers around supporting victims and allowing them time off to go to court and to go through the process that can be quite timely. Then you've got to consider the other side in terms of once a perpetrator, like sometimes the cases can take years to come to court. So, organisations are going to have to look through their policies about their public reputation and the role of the person as well. Like if the role of that person is a frontline guard dealing with domestic violence cases, you might view that very differently than if they're, working in a store away from the public.
I understand. Yeah. Do you organise, when there are high-profile conversations or court cases, do organisations like yours, Donegal Domestic Violence Services, does that be reflected on in contacts in terms of phone calls, texts, emails or what have you?
Sometimes, and it depends what the trigger things are within whatever has come up. I know certainly that do you remember the domestic homicide that happened in Monaghan? So that definitely triggered a lot of things for people because there was no physical violence in the run-up to that case, and we went from a coercive controlling environment into a domestic homicide. And I think that really hit home, and a lot of people became quite alarmed because they hadn't realised that maybe that was one of the pathways in terms of domestic homicide, that there doesn't necessarily have to be a precursor of physical violence before there is actual homicide. So other cases, not necessarily that people are already working on those issues. I would say in terms of that social media post, there was an issue there where she talked about strangulation. And that is a huge red flag for us because that is definitely a red flag in terms of leading up to a domestic homicide. So if anybody is in a domestic violence relationship and thinks, well, there's been no physical violence, but he did try to strangle me once, that is, you've already leapt up several steps on the ladder of concern. So definitely to contact the service if that's happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's evidence and experience based as well. That's why I think you've put so much evidence in that. And I think has it, or is it going to be an offence in and of itself? I think that law was passed, wasn't it, Marie?
Yeah, it certainly is in Northern Ireland. I think non-fatal strangulation is the definition of it.
Correct,
looking for that to become its own crime. And that's the problem with domestic abuse. There is no crime with domestic abuse. It's always, it's either a physical assault or it's a sexual assault or it's stalking or harassment. And hopefully, now the non-fatal strangulation would be another aspect to it. So, domestic violence is very complex and complicated as an issue. And it's always useful to talk through it with somebody else.
I'll only keep you 30 seconds, but this text came in and I just want to put it to you. And I don't understand, I don't really get it when we're talking about the experience of predominantly women and what they have to go through, that men get defensive. I don't understand why people think that, well, women do it too. I mean, we know that, right? But we're talking about the majority of this type of violence is men on women. And it doesn't mean it doesn't happen in reverse, and it doesn't belittle what happens to those people, but people get very defensive of it. And people said, this texter says, it's always the same, men. You'd think women were not capable of same or worse, but we're simply not saying that, are we, Marie? We're talking about the largest, what we see for the most part, but it doesn't in any way suggest it doesn't happen in the other direction or to lessen the experience who's been through that. That's, they're not competing priorities here.
No, and I think, but when you look at statistics in terms of certainly domestic homicide reviews, where multi-agencies are sitting down and reviewing them in the UK at the moment, the vast majority of victims would be female, the vast majority of perpetrators would be male. Sometimes, particularly where you've got mental health and you've got addiction, those lines can get blurred in terms of you might get victims who retaliate and actually are the ones that end up causing the homicide. So it's a complicated relationship. And what's particularly complicated, I think, as we move into an older population, is you've got adult children versus, against their parents. So you've got older population there as well. So no, it's not about saying that it's only men who are violent, but the vast majority of violent perpetrators of domestic abuse are men, and that's just statistically how it stands at the moment. Not that I want it to change, we're trying to reduce the number.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that we don't recognise other things happen as well. Okay, Dr. Marie Hainsworth, thank you for just finally the contact details if anyone's listened to this conversation and having a conversation with the likes of the Donegal Domestic Violence Service does not necessarily trigger a chain of events. It doesn't mean a squad car is going to pull up outside the house necessarily. It's about having a conversation and getting some initial support and talking things through. I think I've described it correctly. You can correct me where I'm wrong. But if someone just wants a conversation, how do they get in contact?
Well, the helpline number is an 1800 number, 1800 262677, or the landline equivalent is 07491 262667. And it's available there for family as well. So, if you're concerned about a family member, we have had lots of family people contact us, and we've had family members from outside the country call us with concerns about family members in Donegal. So, it's there and it's available. We also have the Facebook page, the Messenger, or you can email us on ddvsrefuge at gmail.com. So, put down in writing what it is that you want to chat about.
All right. Have a lovely day, Marie. Thanks so much for helping us cover these issues. Dr. Marie Hainsworth, Manager of Donegal Domestic Violence Services.
Watch the show live now on YouTube, Facebook and at highlandradio.com. The 9 till noon show is brought to you by Letterkenny Credit Union, offering low-rate holiday loans with fast approval. Apply online at letterkennycu.ie or in office today.
You know that guy I've been seeing? Yeah? Turns out my sister's been seeing him too. Oh, really? And I heard he's been seeing Siobhan at number 56. And Declan. Your brother? Yep.
Specsavers opticians and audiologists own their stores, so your care is their business, which can make them rather popular.
I've got something to tell you. I've got half an hour with him this afternoon.
Specsavers, your care is our business.
For the biggest names in perfumes and aftershaves, visit McGee's Chemist Letterkenny. Dior, Armani and Hugo Boss, Victor and Rolf, Marc Jacobs and Lancôme. Also Gucci, Yves Saint Laurent, Prada and many more. From timeless classics to celebrity favourites, there's a perfume or aftershave for everyone at McGee's Chemist Letterkenny and online at mcgees.ie.
Over recent months, we've all been dealing with the reality of rising energy costs, and we've all been making changes to reduce our energy use. However, if you are having trouble paying your energy bills, be sure to talk to your supplier as soon as possible. There are a range of protections in place for customers. Organisations such as MABS and Alone can also help. For information on these and all other supports available, visit gov.ie/reduce your use. Brought to you by the Government of Ireland.
Neglect by successive governments has put the defence and security of our country in peril. That's according to former Garda Sergeant Christy Galligan, who joins us on the programme now. Christy, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Dan.
All right, OK, so expand out on the points that you're making to us a little bit more, please, Christy.
Yeah. Well, it really was the Commission on the Defence Forces report in 2022 showed that we are defenceless on land, sea and air. It's rogue states like Russia wanted to invade, all right? And we are really a very weak part of the defence of Europe, should I say. Well, we're reliant on our nearest neighbour, the UK, to thwart any threats under an agreement that was signed in 1952, which is considered today by, I think, Gerald Craughwell as unconstitutional, and that should have went to a referendum and for the people to decide. So we are in a situation where our defence capabilities are very weak. We only spend something like 0.2% of GDP. Compared to other neutral countries, it's a very small manila amount. We've heard about the pay and conditions within the forces itself, but we have 8 aircraft, one of which is a piloted PC-9 and 2 Eurocopters. None of these have the capabilities to intercept something like a Tupolev bomber, which is up at 35 to 40,000 feet. We rely on the British Army or the Defence Forces to intercept, using Typhoons to intercept, and they come from Scotland once they detect it on their system, to come in and escort these bombers or other fighters from our international. We've had 2 situations recently where, in 2020, where 2 Russian Tupolev bombers, Tu-95 aircraft, were twice entered Irish-controlled airspace and had to be escorted out by RAF. This shows you how weak we are in relation to our own sovereignty, and we also have the issue of Russian warships off the coast of Ireland, which, in true reflection, shows how dangerous Russia has become. And it could be interfering with underwater cables, we don't know, because we were reliant on other countries to come to our aid.
But in reality, Christy, we are military neutral. Clearly, we're not politically neutral any longer. We've been dragged into this by the leaders of the countries. But in reality, no matter what we spend, given the size and population of this country, we could never really put any defence up. If the Russians or whomever were to take a notion to launch some sort of a salvo against Europe from the island of Ireland, there's no defence really that we could offer in any case. How many planes would it take? How many anti-aircraft missiles would it take? How many boats would it take for it to be in any way meaningful to justify the expense?
Well, they're saying that from the Commissioner of Defence Forces stated that the Irish Air Corps needs to acquire an air combat and intercept capability. They would require a squadron of new aircraft like the Typhoon, 12 to 24 aircraft, to justify us ensuring the safety of the skies over Irish, jurisdiction. And that's what we need. We have, would you believe it, we have a defence capability that is virtually obsolete, a giraffe radar system, which is used to guide the Defence Forces on limited ground-based air defense systems, is considered obsolete. We have an L-70 anti-air cannons, RB-70s, and things like that there that the Defence Forces say are now no longer usable and are most likely extinct. So I think really, when we look at the Irish Naval Service, we had 6 boats tied up because they can't get the crews to crew them. Yet we're going to send one of them off to Libya. Another problem is we have our army on the ground who are constantly crying about pay and conditions, who have been under-resourced for many, many, many years. And that's from successive governments, unfortunately, because we use the neutrality thing as a kind of a buffer for everything. We see what neutrality did or sovereignty did in Ukraine. We have neutral countries like Sweden or Nordic countries like Sweden and Finland who've signed up to NATO. Even though they were neutral, they're signing up as a defence against that. That doesn't stop us from doing that. We're sitting on a UN Security Council, which can be vetoed. Anything we bring forward can be vetoed by one of the aggressors, which is Russia. Russia, who is the chair of the UN Security Council at the present moment in time. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Has the biggest threat to Irish airspace, though, over the last 40 or 50 years not been from British military aircraft in the skies above the Republic of Ireland, not Russian aircraft, for crying out loud?
But funny enough, we allowed the incursion of a military aircraft in because of this agreement in 1952, which has been challenged in the High Court by Senator Jerry Craughwell. And we have allowed them, and during the Troubles, as we called it, to come in over the border up to 5 miles. So it has always been there. There's been this agreement between both governments that the UK, because we don't have the capabilities anyway, to defend ourselves anyway if something happened. We rely on British RAF to come in here over our skies. But what they cannot do, unless an officer of the Irish Air Corps gives, or an officer in the Defence Forces gives the okay, what they cannot do is shoot another plane down. All they can do is escort the aggressors.
Is it not the case, though, in reality, that we are not going to be necessarily the targets of any sort of activity, that it probably would be Britain or France or whomever? You know, we are neutral. Let's maintain that neutrality. In fact, I think we should be exploiting that neutrality on the world stage, particularly given the success of the Good Friday Agreement for the most part. You know, rather than tooling up and aligning ourselves all the more with, you know, the likes of you know, mainland Europe and Britain, that we should actually, you know, be proud of the status that we have. And if the RAF want to use our airspace to thwart off any threat to mainland Britain, then let them do so. But why should we be pumping money into it?
But as you said yourself, I mean, neutrality is kind of aspirational for us. It's not set in stone. And what you've already said is we're no longer neutral. Technically, we're no longer neutral because we have supported Ukraine regarding defence. We have supported others in relation to it, in relation to European policy. What we could do really at the end of the day is we have PESCO and the common defence policies that if we signed up to them in relation to hybrids, definitely cybersecurity and hybrid security is very, very important as well. We don't have the equipment to deploy against any attacks or any real attacks at the end of the day. I find it extraordinary that while the Russian warships are off the west coast of Ireland, probably interfering with the underwater cables, we don't know that yet for a fact, but they are being looked at, that we have a naval service that cannot deploy all of its vessels at any one time to ensure that our waters are safe at the present moment in time.
Well, I suppose when you pay pittance to the army, members of the army, whereby effectively our navy is just a training vessel where people work for a while and then go on to other things, to the point where these boats are tied up because they literally can't staff them, and they'll claim they're in for servicing, but the bottom line is they can't staff them. We've a long way to go. You have to start at the bottom, pay people the right amount of money.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Greg. I absolutely agree with you there on that. The pay and conditions within the Defence Forces is abominable and has been for many years, and we've treated our Defence Force personnel, who should be credited with the great work they're doing in peacekeeping. They should first and foremost be paid proper and be treated not as second-class citizens, which I always said that the Defence Forces have been treated as second-class citizens. And a lot of those people who are deployed, I hear from family members who have to go to food banks, etc., or have to get extra social welfare payments because the payments they get from within the Defence Forces is not helped either. And that's why you see so many people resigning from the Defence Forces. We have people from the Air Corps who resign after we trained up on training aircraft, because that's most of what we have. Those 8 aircraft, most of them are just training aircraft, not really interceptors or anything else. They wouldn't be able to withstand a MiG-29 or
no, certainly if it flew above 25,000 feet, they couldn't. So finally, then, I mean, obviously, reading through your letter, it's a state of play. It's where we're at and how we got here. So finally, the question is, Christy, what do you believe should be done? Do you believe that we should be increasing our investment in the armed forces, that we should be buying in modern plane, training pilots for them, increasing our naval fleet, having them fully serviced? Do you believe that that's where money nowadays in Ireland should be spent?
Well, as I listened to the Minister for Expenditure and also for Finance say that they have extra money in the bin. They could use that money to update and pay our Defence Force, but update the equipment that the Defence Forces doesn't have. I think that's the way to go if we are to have any chance of ensuring our own security and safety.
Okay, but I get exactly what you're saying, but let's take Ukraine for an example. A country that had an army that knew after Crimea was annexed, they knew the Russians were coming back. They had years and years to prepare for it. But the reality is that if it wasn't for the Western intervention, they would have been wiped out in 2 days. I think it's 170 billion the Americans have pumped in, a further 25 billion the EU has pumped in, and still all it is and it's a horrible phrase, but at the moment all that's happening is it's a meat churner for both young Russian and young Ukrainian men. And it's worth remembering, by the way, that a lot of the Ukrainian men involved in this, they're conscripted. They have no choice. They can't leave, and they are sent to the front lines probably to die. I don't think an awful lot of people realise that these young men fighting, young men for the most part, are actually conscripts. They've got no choice. They are sent to the front line, and if they don't do that, the penalties are incredibly, incredibly severe. So it's not just the Russians doing that, the Ukrainians are doing that. But my point being, with all the knowledge of what was coming, with all the preparation, they still would have been wiped out in a day or two if it wasn't for billions upon billions, multiple hundreds of billions being pumped in there just to keep Russia to the east. So what's the point in us wasting any money and risking young Irish lives in offering any defence? Let's head out to Merva Beach, Rosnala Beach, and just wave our white flags or wave them across our heads and say Britain's behind us.
Yeah, but the problem with that analogy is that we could raise our white flags and say, no, we're neutral, there's nothing to be seen here. Does that matter a whit to people like Vladimir Putin? Certainly not. This guy has been in charge of one of the biggest defence forces in the world. Yes, he wasn't satisfied to live a sovereign state alone. He came in, he demolished parts of it. Of the state that he wanted to take over, he has demolished it. He's killed hundreds of thousands. There have been serious war crimes. Do you think he would have anything different for Ireland?
But do you think we could really put up any meaningful defence? And I think kind of we're at a stalemate there. I think we're kind of at a stalemate there, because I would be... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't believe we can put up any defence at the present moment in time when you see how bad we are in relation to our spend. There's 0.2% of GDP on spend on the defence forces. No, we couldn't. We couldn't. But at least that if you have updated equipment and you have what is required under the Defence Force Commission, the report on the Defence Force Commission, we need to look at how we are going to reduce the threat from.
Well, one way we could reduce the threat is the leaders of this country who don't, I would argue, have the mandate to, who don't have the mandate really to play with our supposed neutrality, is to not antagonise the greatest potential threat. And we got a direct threat to Ireland from Russia. Yes. And because of, I think it was Micheál Martin's comments about a person who chose to travel from Ireland and fight for Ukraine, and off the back of Micheál Martin's comments, we got a direct threat that if we meddle, then we can face all the consequences of that.
And it's not, but I think threats like that we know from the Russian embassy and Russia itself. Threats like that are we must take seriously as well. But they are threats to our sovereignty. And if we cannot defend our sovereignty in some meaningful way, other than just by words alone, then we're no longer a sovereign nation.
Okay. Well, I would like us to use our sovereignty as peacemakers, personally speaking. I don't want my sons to be, I don't want my sons or anyone's sons or any person from this county or this region to be dragged into someone else's war. But anyway,
no one wants that.
I respect your views and I appreciate you sharing them with us. What do you think out there? 08660 25,000.
The 9 till noon show is brought to you by Letterkenny Credit Union, offering low-rate car loans with fast approval. Apply online at letterkennycu.ie or in office today.
Go full Lidl for a summer of savings just like our customers.
We've a lot more in the fridge by the end of the week. Like, we're never running empty anymore. So it's fantastic to be able to budget and know this is what we're going to spend. And the kids can always throw in an extra few bits here and there. Like, our youngest girl throws and hides everything in the trolley.
Go on. Go full Lidl today.
Planning on renovating your garden this summer? Then look no further than Dealside Garden Furniture. With a full range of sizes in garden sheds, summer houses, playhouses, outdoor canopies, fencing and much more. Dealside Garden Furniture Lifford. Made to measure and one-off designs are our speciality. Find us on social media.
Country Sundays continue at the Clanry Hotel this weekend, featuring Jimmy Buckley and his band. Admission €15, dancing 9 till 11. For accommodation packages, call the Clanry Hotel Letterkenny on 9124 369.
Transform your home with a visit to McGinley's Furniture Letterkenny, located at the Portlink Business Park just off the Port Road. You'll find a huge selection of top quality suites, beds and mattresses, also slide robes and custom-made dining and occasional furniture, with prices to suit every budget. See the great choice for yourself at our showroom, McGinley's Furniture, Portlink Business Park, Port Road, Letterkenny. Click mcginleysfurniture.com.
Okay, some quick reaction to our last conversation coming in. Who would want to take this country? We can't even agree north and south. The Russian ships are only here to spy on the UK. Nothing else. That being said, there is some concern. They are looking to interfere with those communication lines. Another caller says, Russia will never bother Ireland if our government mind their own business, and we, the people, don't give our government any right to change this either. Another, has Ireland become more paranoid? There was never discussions on Ireland's warfaring a few years ago. Don't promote current proxy wars if required. The pikemen will return. Okay. I think there's always been a conversation about our position in various conflicts. There was a lot of conversation that continues about the use of Shannon for the invasion of Iraq, Afghanistan. In the Second World War, we allowed British planes to flying out of Fermanagh, I believe it was, to fly over Irish airspace. I think for generations, the conversation about our neutrality or our role either directly or indirectly in various conflicts, has been there. This is just the latest wave of it. But I think there's sort of more of a conversation now about a European army and what have you. Hi, Greg. In relation to those temporary speed limits, I agree fully with Colm. Move the sign or add another flashing sign. It's unreasonable the way it is, which seems to be a consensus out there. Ireland doesn't do well in the Eurovision because they're so far up the Brits. You know what Brits saw hated all over the world, and Sinn Féin whining and dining with people who put our Republicans in the grave. They're a disgrace to the Irish peoples. I'm not really sure the people watching and voting on the Eurovision are perhaps get all the nuances of politics here. The sign from the Newton side is never on. Back to that issue we talked about earlier. There was a queue of 50 people at Dunn's today, says this listener. Is this Dunn's in Letterkenny? I was so shocked to hear what they were queuing for. It's a drink. They found it on TikTok. It's called Prime. Absolutely ridiculous. It's a phenomenon, this Prime thing. There's a couple of YouTubers that are responsible for it. They've created this drink. They are making an absolute fortune. I think it's just an energy drink. I've never tasted it. But people do queue and pay a fortune for cans of this drink called Prime. It's just a regular drink. There's nothing fancy in it. And as I say, it's got one of the Logan brothers behind it, and KSI is behind it, and they're pushing it on their YouTube channels. That's where all the young people are. Unfortunately, they're not listening to me, I don't think. Not in mass... Although... we've got some great news in that regard coming up a little later on today. But anyway, I can't say anything else. All I know is that I'm not young anymore. I don't get it. But the young ones are mad for this Prime drink, particularly, I think, because of who is backing and pushing it. Okay, back with more after the break. We'll get the news at 11 for you.
The 9 till noon show is brought to you by Letterkenny Credit Union, with monster loans available up to €60,000 for all occasions. Visit letterkennycu.ie.
Super Value makes saving money as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. We match Aldi on the products you love. 2. Great special offers like cupboard favourites like selected Cadbury multi-packs, Nestle Cheerios 540 gram and Lucasade orange 6-pack bottles, any 3 for €9. And 3. Money off vouchers every week on the app. So follow the 1, 2, 3 and save money at Super Value.
Join me, Marty Friel, every Friday night from 8 for Rockin' Hits on Highland Radio in association with Arena 7, where you can enjoy dinner and drinks in the Woodbury Grill Bar and Restaurant before bowling in Arena 7's state-of-the-art lanes. See arena7.ie.
A public information day on the preferred option for Nadunov flood relief scheme will take place on Thursday the 11th of May in Miva Family Resource Centre from 4 p.m. until 8 p.m. This will be an opportunity for the public to view the option before it goes to the statutory planning process. Attendees will also be able to discuss the option in person with the project team and provide feedback. All are welcome and encouraged to come along anytime between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. No appointment is necessary.
Jake's famous All-American Burgers has crossed the Atlantic and is now in Kelly's American Roadside Diner. Always tasty, always fresh, and so damn satisfying. Call in now for a taste of Southern hospitality at Kelly's American Roadside Diner.
Bunnigy United and Cockhill Celtic face off in the Ulster Senior League Cup final this Sunday. Cockhill are chasing several trophies in the closing weeks of the season, while Bunnigy are looking to close out the year by lifting silverware. Kick-off at McGinn Park in Buncrana is 4 p.m. on Sunday, and coverage from the final on Highland is in association with the Dry Arch Complex Letterkenny. 24-hour service station, shop, deli, off-licence and Dry Arch Inn.
The county's #1 talk show, The 9 till noon show on Highland Radio.
Good morning to you. It's 11 o'clock. Let's get a news update, and it's over to Donna Marie Doherty.
Thanks, Greg. Good morning. The chairperson of the MICA Action Group says the main 13 amendments for the draft defective concrete block regulations are disappointing, but not surprising. They came following a virtual meeting between the group and the Housing Minister Darragh O'Brien yesterday for a briefing of the revised scheme, which is expected to be published in coming weeks. A Donegal deputy says there needs to be an increase in development in rural towns and villages. Deputy Thomas Pringle, speaking during a motion on planning and rural housing, says the current housing crisis is being exacerbated by the current planning system. More in 2 in 5 older renters believe they'll be renting for the rest of their lives as they think there's no other option available to them. A new report from Threshold and Alone shows a similar number have experienced high levels of stress from renting in the private sector. Glenties Municipal District has been told there is a cluster of houses between Dunlow and Doohery where a grip water scheme was promised several years ago, but nothing has been done. Councillor Mary Tres Gallagher told an MD meeting this week that the water getting into the homes at present is so bad it can barely be used for animals, and people are having to buy bottled water for cooking and drinking. Much needed water rehabilitation works are to be set out in the Finn Valley this year. The area has been plagued with a range of issues affecting water supply from Loch Morn, with residents frequently left without water. Cahirlock of the Lifford Municipal District, Councillor Patrick McGowan, says the works will significantly improve the everyday needs of people. And finally, pharmacies are facing a major shortage of a drug that's used to treat type 2 diabetes. It follows an uptick of the use of Ozempic to manage weight or treat obesity. The drug is not licensed for weight loss, but many doctors are prescribing it for off-licence use. Those are the latest headlines. We'll be back with more at 12 o'clock. Until then, good morning.
All right, Donna Marie, thank you very much indeed. We've a really short break to take. Stay right where you are. Back with more on the 9 till noon show.
They might have been your best buddies since you were babies. They might be the only one who knows about that thing you did. They might be your boo, your homegirl, your muchacho, but you've just got 6 deliciously crisp chicken McNuggets. So you have to ask yourself, are they McNugget worthy? Served after 11 a.m, subject to availability.
Right, okay. We are joined on the programme now by Councillor Jimmy Kavanagh. Jimmy, good morning to you. Thanks for taking the call.
Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Not too bad at all. Now, we are talking about school safety again, this time Lurgy Brack National School, and I think that's at the top of the hill heading out of Letterkenny towards Ballybofey, and everyone would know that it's not ideal the way it's laid out currently. Jimmy, what are you looking for?
Yeah, Greg, I have to say, first of all, that from the child safety point of view, it's not too bad. It's as good as it can be. They have it well managed and for dropping off the kids and that. It's when you're exiting from there, trying to exit from there with the car onto that road again, it is so dangerous. And basically, speeding seems to be the biggest problem, Greg. I was out there on Tuesday morning to just to see it when it's busy at the school morning time, and like the speed of cars is unreal there. So, you know, there is an intermittent speed reduction at school times to 60 kilometres, but that seems to be ignored pretty much 100%. So I'm looking, first of all, maybe to improve that signage to make it better, to make it more visible. I don't think it's as visible as it could be on both sides. And there's only a speed thing there on one side. So if you're overtaking somebody, for example, you wouldn't see it at all.
Yeah, or if there's a slow-moving lorry, it's obscured the whole way up. Exactly. And also, too, and I've highlighted it on this programme before, Jimmy, as soon as there's any growth, it's, for the most part, obscured by branches. I must have a check in it a little later on. And it's similar to another story we were talking about earlier on. We have to give motorists the best chance, don't we, to abide by the reduced speed limit.
Absolutely, Greg, and you're 100% right. That is a problem too with being overgrown by branches and so on. And that was actually just cut last week out there at Lurgy Brack to clear that problem. But another issue, Greg, is just above the school on the Ballybofey side coming down. There's room there for a sort of proper hard shoulder. Now at the moment it's just a path, and in winter that path turns into muck. So if you're walking down there with kids, and I actually watched on Tuesday morning a lady coming down with 2 kids walking down in that direction, and the cars are whizzing by, and it's so dangerous, and they just have this rough path to work on. If that could be made into a proper hard shoulder, it would make things easier. And as well in winter time, dark winter mornings, the kids are coming in to school covered in muck because of that. So it's just far from ideal. So I think if we could spend some money on that, making that a proper path, it would ease things. And the other thing that I thought, Greg, is people even living very close by to the school, still have to take their car down to the school because it's too dangerous to walk that little path with children. So that adds to the traffic issue then, So another thing maybe, Greg, that could be looked at, and I don't know how the possibilities around this, but if there was maybe an extra bus or something like that could bring more children there by bus, it might ease the number of cars there as well.
Yeah.
But
the thing that concerns me about that, Jimmy, too, is just particularly the way that road is laid out, that if we do have a crash, it could be catastrophic. Do you know, that sort of way? Because there's be multiple cars, multiple people standing around the place. I'd just be so afraid driving past there, just because if something happens, you just get the sense that it could be really, really bad.
That's right, Craig. And to go out there and stand there at a busy time in the morning really brought it home to me in a way. The cars are just non-stop and there's lines of them and they're going fast and you're right. And it's so difficult to exit from there. If something did happen, you're absolutely right. It could be an absolute catastrophe, So it does need looked at. Now, the council have agreed in their answer to me that they're going to apply for funding under the scheme, under the safety scheme for the road, and I'm hoping that something can come from that. I suppose, Craig, as you would realise, that sort of thing has to go through a process, and it takes
the
time.
TII are involved as well, I presume as well. It's not just the council.
Yes, but I'm hoping that something can come to make it as safe as possible, and I would like to see that hard shoulder done, and certainly improvement on the lighting or on the signage and that.
Yeah, because I presume if and when, which I'm sure they will, the T10 roads progress, that would take traffic away from the site from the school for the most part, I think. But we can't wait for that to happen. That could be decades away.
That's absolutely, Greg. That is the solution. But as you know, that's a number of years away, and we have to do everything we can in the meantime to try and make it as safe as possible.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not beyond it. I mean, we saw some work that was done, say, for instance, outside Lahey. I'm not sure if you've been down that part of the world in the last while. There are things that you can do to narrow and slow traffic down that aren't incredibly expensive and aren't a permanent solution, but they certainly, can make things safer. I'm not saying that's the solution here, but something along those lines might work. Who's to say?
That's right, Craig. And that's basically what I'm asking them to do, is to look at every short-term measure that we can apply to make it as safe as possible.
Thanks for your time this morning. Have a lovely day. That's Fine Gael County Councillor Jimmy Kavanagh there. 08660 25,000. By coincidence, the Maharabeg school safety issue and the Lurgy Brack school safety issue just happened to come up at the same time, and both important, of course, because that's where our young people are, but also important that we keep the motorists safe using roads. Hi, Greg. Just wanted to highlight this issue again with the setup in Letterkenny Hospital. Since COVID started, patients have to attend ED to get triaged, even though in my case, the ED can't do anything for me. I need to be referred to the gynae ward as I was threatening a miscarriage. It was a GP-sent referral. This is my third time in 2 years, and each time I had to go into the A&E. Last week, I sat for over 2 hours in a very busy A&E, thinking I was going to bleed out and suffer a loss in a room full of people, only for my husband pushing triage nurses to get me through. I would have been sitting there hours like everyone else. I then sat for nearly another 3 hours before being seen in gynae. Greg, this needs to change. The hospital policy needs to change. Taking away masks, grand, but expecting pregnant ladies who are having issues to sit in a crowded room waiting to be triaged, absolutely ridiculous. And this this lady suffered 2 previous losses at 19 weeks and 9 weeks. So you can imagine the stress and anxiety and having to deal with, obviously, the emotional stress, but the physical consequences of a threatened miscarriage as to why you might end up there in the first place, needing access to toilets and what have you. My understanding was in the past, and we did raise this issue quite some time ago, in the past you would be admitted straight into gynae. I think you used to go in through the main front doors. It was straight in because it's a medical emergency, a threat to the life of the unborn child. But now people having to go through ED and being triaged, particularly given that where they're going to end up and where they need to go. I just would love to see that changed. I really would, because I was in a conversation with another woman who had a very similar experience, very, very difficult for them. In about 5 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, Caroline, but I can take it any time. A caller says that this mother had a really positive experience with the hospital yesterday. She broke her arm at 8:20 yesterday morning. She was with the doctor by 9:20, and she was x-rayed and in a cast and back home by 12:20 in the afternoon. They must be commended when they do things well. Indeed. And how do I put this? Nothing is anti-hospital that I try and do here. It's firstly, it's in support of the people, but it's in support of the staff. And we were speaking yesterday to consultants. It's in support of them. It's that the infrastructures are improved so they can do their job better, like they want to, and also in a better environment. It's not a overall criticism, and I hope it wouldn't come from a programme like this that it's an overall criticism of the hospital, that it's not. And everyone who contacts us, bar a minute percentage, is full of praise for the staff and are generally happy when they get seen. It's getting in, it's getting seen, it's getting to bed. And as I say, it's not about trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater and indiscriminate criticism of the hospital. We try and focus on areas that require improvement based off people's experience and communications we have with staff as well, because we recognise any acute hospital, it's going to be a difficult, stressful situation for the patients and for the people working there, but there must be stuff we can do, and we try and highlight it here, that can improve people's outcomes and experience and the experience of staff and what have you as well. Do you get me? So we're trying to be constructive, even though it sounds like we're highlighting negative. Any positive experiences that you have, and we read them out regularly in this programme, please bring them to us as well, because as well as that, I never want to be a part of discouraging people to attend the hospital either, okay? Right. Let me take a quick break and we'll be back with our next guest shortly.
The county's #1 talk show, The 9 till Noon Show on Highland Radio.
The 9 till Noon Show with Letterkenny Credit Union. Simplify your debts with a debt consolidation loan from Letterkenny Credit Union. Call us on 074 910 2126 or apply online via our app or in office today. Join All Folk Dub live at the Phoenix Tavern Bundoran this Saturday, 13th of May. That's All Folk Dub at the Phoenix Tavern Bundoran this Saturday, 13th of May. Tickets available from Eventbrite.
At Centra, feel good and shop smart with great offers this week. Like Centra selected meats, mix and match, any 3 for €10. Centra selected fruit and veg, mix and match, any 3 for €2.50. And wines we love, Unjure on Rosé, only €10. Centra, live every day. Enjoy alcohol sensibly.
Dust off your cowboy boots and hats for the Country Hoedown in Ramelton Community Centre. This Saturday, 13th of May, in aid of the Lennon Festival. There's music with Paul McCahill from 9 till midnight. Prizes for the best dressed cowboy and cowgirl, and everyone is welcome. Admission is €10. That's this Saturday in Ramelton Community Centre.
Highland Radio time checks with Expressway. Travel Route 32 from Letterkenny to Dublin when you book online and travel for less. Expressway, bringing you the time at...
Okay, you're welcome back to the programme. And we're joined in studio by 2 guests now. We have Reverend Jim Lamont and Kathleen Doherty, both of you. Very welcome to the programme. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay. Good to have you in. And we are talking about Letterkenny University Hospital's annual Little Angels Interdenominational Service of Remembrance. It's taking place in Letterkenny on Sunday, the 14th of May. Do you want to talk a little to us, Kathleen, about this?
Well, this is a remembrance service that we hold every year for families who have who've gone through the terrible loss of a pregnancy or the loss of a baby, and now we've included families who've lost their little children as well in this service. This is our first service now since 2019, and it's a beautiful service, and it's one way of, I suppose, reaching out to people as well, sort of bereavement support, family support. The staff all come together and prepare this service for the families, and we have it on the Irish Martyrs Church down in Letterkenny, and it's generally very well attended. every year, and it was a huge loss to us for the last couple of years that we couldn't have it, even though we did do it here on Highland Radio. It was a huge loss because we weren't meeting the people. It was always lovely to meet families coming back, and sometimes you may have families coming back and they'd had a loss, and maybe they might have a little baby with them.
Yeah.
You know, so it's wonderful in that families always feel that they're not alone in their loss when they see other people.
And I think too, not particularly, but certainly in the area of miscarriage, for an example, it affects lots of people in different ways. And sometimes when we try and speak to someone who's suffered a miscarriage, we can say the wrong things or presume that, oh, you can go again, or at least it was early, or people hear really probably well-intended but hurtful things. But for people who feel that loss as if it were, because it is to them, the loss of a born child, it gives them a space, doesn't it, for their child to be recognised, for their loss to be recognised as well. I imagine that's incredibly important to a lot of people.
I think it's very, very important to people, and it's unimaginable how deep and how sorrowful that loss is. And you see that on families' faces when they do lose their pregnancy. It doesn't matter what stage this little baby is lost at. It's unimaginable, the suffering that those families go through, the couples go through. And in the hospital, if families want, we visit them. We visit the parents, and we have a prayer service at the bedside. And we would encourage families to allow themselves to grieve and to acknowledge this loss. And the prayer service in some ways does actually acknowledge the life that was there, even though it might have been a very short time that life was there.
Which is so important to a lot of people, isn't it, Reverend Lamont? It is.
Well, I think the point is this miscarriage, this child is a member of the family, and I try and tell people that this is your child, and they give it a name, or him a name, and they're members of your family and always will be members of your family. Because I remember we had a miscarriage in our marriage way back many years ago at an early stage, but we didn't. I got a shock in my life when I went in and they said, "Oh, your wife's had an abortion." Well, abortion was sort of a bad word at that time, and then as well as that, we didn't see anything. There was nothing for us at all. I don't know where the baby. We didn't know the sex of the baby. We didn't know what happened to the baby afterwards, and off home we went, and that was it. Whereas at least now there's a little funeral type service within the church.
We have we have a lovely service in the hospital if the families want it, and we would encourage them, and let them know that this big service once a year takes place, and they're very open to it. Some families might come that year, and maybe they mightn't come for a couple of years. Some people never come back at all, and that's okay.
And everyone's individual. I think Reverend Lamont quite right put it out that things have changed now, and that it is recognised for what it is. It's not just and I think the term you referenced at that time, that was the medical term for what happened. The pregnancy was aborted, and the language and what have you has changed. Reverend, this is open to everyone, and I think that's really important, isn't it? That this is all denominations and none, really. It's just for people to get together, and you have to strike the tone there too, which I'm told you always do.
Well, this is the way I live, and I feel that everyone is a member of the family. The whole family, whoever they are, whatever they are, and the thing that I was going to say as Kathleen was talking was we missed the family being here at the service, but they missed meeting each other. And that was that's an important part. When I came here, and I've been doing this for 20 years, and remember meeting a lady at the first service I was at, and we were talking to her. She had lost her baby 30 years previously, and yet she was still coming, to the service. So
it's sad and beautiful at the same time, really, in a way, isn't it? And Jim, also too, and we all learned, I think, through the COVID pandemic, us coming together, be it a wake or a funeral or even just calling at the house or whatever, but particularly I think the wake and the funeral was perhaps part of a grieving process that we didn't recognise before it was taken from us, because I spoke to people who didn't have that experience and they still couldn't even begin to make sense of the loss, let alone begin some sort of process of grieving. So we do need to come together at times, don't we?
Yes, I think that the wakes here in Donegal are different from other places, and somewhere further down the country there would be no wakes at all, or there wouldn't be a thing. Whereas I think it's an important part of the grieving that the people do chance to see come to the home, even just say sorry for your trouble, which I don't like, but still saying that.
but we struggle in that moment, don't we? But to say the right thing.
To come just to be a present, and sometimes an arm around a shoulder with words unspoken can be just as important.
I always, not always, sorry, I remember in the past I would sort of say, I don't want to be waked. And then I can't remember who it was said to me, it's not really about you at that point, it's about your family, and it's about people that want to pay their respects, and it might not really matter to me at that point. Do you know what I mean? And it did change I'm still not fabulously in favour of the idea, but I know it's that's not what the process is. It's not about the deceased. And Kathleen, Reverend Lamont made an interesting point, talking of one lady that, or maybe it was you, I think it was the Reverend, that someone comes at multiple, but I imagine that people will attend this mass and have in the past when it's right for them to do it, because it can take a while to work through losses, particularly if it's of a child.
I've never lost a child, so I don't know. I can't imagine what it's like for a family to go through something like this, for parents, you know, to go through a loss. And yes, it is. We're all so different. Some people could be there within 6 weeks. For example, we could meet somebody at this service on Sunday who sadly lost their pregnancy or lost their child maybe 2 months ago in the hospital, and they're there. And you could meet people and it's the first time maybe they had their loss 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 10 years ago.
Just when it's right for them.
It's all about time, and it's all about whether they're able to do it. And you know, I've had family members who've had miscarriages and losses, and they've never been able to go, and that's okay too. You know,
when our wee Hudson was born, the panic station started, and then he ended up in the neonatal wards.
Yes, neonatal,
right? And we didn't know, it was touch and go. We just simply didn't know what was going to happen, and you know, that important window of time, there was very little change, and you know, the language was changing a bit, and then like in a miracle, almost miraculously, then he just began to breathe independently, and now he's such a beautiful and healthy boy, and I never would ever take for granted that how lucky we are. But my point being is that the care and genuine care of staff in that whole process and how they deal with people is really amazing, and I'll be forever grateful for what they did for us. But the point I'm getting to is that I am sure staff feel the losses, and I feel sure staff feel the pain, and I would imagine staff, if they can or spare the time, would attend these services and get comfort from that, because as I say, they are us, they're of the community, they're not robots.
No, but we're all human beings, and you can't work with people and not have compassion and sympathy and empathy and concern for people, and that's what makes it special, that we are all human beings trying to do our best in situations that sometimes are very, very difficult and unbelievable, you know. And like, for example, your situation there where your child was very, very ill, and those moments of fear and worry and dread, and then everything to come right, there would be such a sigh of relief and such gratitude. And even in loss, Greg, people will say to us, thank you so much for being so good to us, and thank you so much for everything, and the nurses here have been wonderful, and the caterer, got lovely lunch there, it was really beautiful. Everybody's been so kind to me while I've been here, and so kind to my husband or my partner as well, and it matters when people are working together and caring for each other. You can't do it without emotion, without feelings.
Yeah, you can't, of course, and you carry at least some of it with you. And I think it's important, Reverend, that we do recognise, and we do, I think, when there are major events, quite rightly so, we are full of praise of the first responders and what have you, but I think we also have to, and I'm actually going to put the clergy in this as well, if you will forgive me for doing so, in the people that on an everyday basis, be it the fire service that turn up for fire and have to work in very difficult decisions and make very grim discoveries, or ambulance and Gardaí that might have to visit a road traffic collision, a member of the clergy who may have to go to a scene like that there, or try and make some sense of it through religion to a family member, and the nurses. They're not immune. I think we need to sort of maybe, and I think a lot of us do, is to really appreciate the work that they do all of the time. Reverend Lamont.
Yes, I think, you see, the problem can be that a service can be the same all the time, and for me, a funeral service, or the service for a child, is a personal thing, and therefore it has to be different. And I've been to certain services at times, and I wouldn't know sometimes whether the person, this is going to a funeral service, I wouldn't know if the person that was being buried was a man or a woman, because there's no reference to them. But I always, or at least I try, but I do my best, if that we're dealing with this family, this situation, this child, and we're focusing in on that, and therefore it has to be very personal for them and for all around. And it's difficult.
Life is difficult.
You can't make it.
A challenge,
It's not easy.
And that's why we get great comfort often by coming together, and that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a ceremony taking place on the 14th for all families who've lost their babies through miscarriage, neonatal death and stillbirth, as well as those who have suffered the loss of a child. The event is scheduled to take place at 3 p.m. on this coming Sunday. It is, in fact, at the Church of the Irish Martyrs in Letterkenny, which is located where, Kathleen?
In Ballyrain here in Letterkenny.
Okay,
yeah.
So people will know where it is. They'll stick it into the Google Maps or whatever it might be, and everybody is welcome. It is it's the annual Little Angels interdenominational service of remembrance for everyone. Really effective if it's the right time for people. Anything you want to add, Kathleen, before we go?
No, other than thank you for talking to us this morning, and thank you for allowing us to highlight this lovely service that's taking place, and it'll be just so lovely to welcome people back after 3 years, and it's a very special time for us in the hospital too, those who've been preparing this service, and a lot of new bonds have been forged down in the hospital, and new project leaders, new project managers, like for example in the paediatric ward we have people there now who are leading out on the care of families and children who might be coming to the end of life, and in the maternity ward as well, we've got the bereavement midwife, and then in the gynae ward we've got bereavement people there as well. So we've built new relationships and getting to know each other, and this little prayer service has done that as well. So we're hoping that it'll grow and evolve and develop in new ways now in the future, but it's going to be a really, really special afternoon on Sunday, and I love it. I love that service. It's a very emotional service. It's a very there's a lot of tears, there's a lot of hugging, there's a lot of getting together, connecting with each other again, and I suppose that's the biggest part of this service this year, is that we're all getting back together again, and it'll be really lovely to be part of it.
Yes, it's important, and I think a very important part for this service, unlike the other two we've had, which we broadcast in Highland, is the fact that they are meeting each other. It gives parents a realisation, well, I'm not the only one to start with, but they have an opportunity to meet with each other and speak with each other. And little phrase that I sometimes use is that only a mother or a father who's lost a child can really understand what another family's going through who lose theirs.
Okay, and that Mass is at 3 p.m. This coming Sunday at the Church of the Irish Martyrs in Letterkenny, and all of you are welcome to it. Kathleen Doherty, thank you so much for your time, and for all of the staff, the work that you do down there in this area, and recognising it's difficult for everybody, of course. And last but not least, of course, Reverend Jim Lamont, thank you so much for coming in and speaking to us.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll be back with more shortly.
Watch the show live now on YouTube, Facebook, and at highlandradio.com. The 9 till noon show is brought to you by Letterkenny Credit Union. Digital loans now available. Apply online or via our app today and get your loan transferred directly to your current account.
Charge into summer with TUI. Choose from a beach, cruise or city break or Mexico flying direct from Dublin. Holiday sorted. TUI. Live happy.
Why did I choose Ulster? I wanted a university who could give me the biggest possible future, but also the best possible time now. Somewhere I could make friends and have good crack, but also to set me up for the best job possible. I'm planning to take up one of the study abroad options, and then my big plan is to specialise in media law in LA. But for now, NI has one of the lowest student living costs in the UK. So, night markets, here I come.
Learn why over 30,000 students choose Ulster at ulster.ac.uk/go north. Apply now for this September.
Don't miss the incredible tumbling paddies in the Abbey Hotel, Donegal Town on Saturday 13th of May. Tickets are €20 and can be purchased online at abbeyhoteldonegal.com or you can pay at the door. Don't miss out on this unforgettable night with the tumbling paddies.
Are you one of Donegal's next female entrepreneurs? Ambition is an accelerator programme run by Local Enterprise Office Donegal that helps female entrepreneurs develop the skills and resilience needed to build globally scalable ventures, attract investment and create jobs. Ambition is open to female founders, entrepreneurs or those with a strong startup idea with potential to be globally scalable. Register for the Ambition Open Evening on the 18th of May at localenterprise.ie/Donegal.
Now, Derry senior football manager Rory Gallagher has this morning responded after his estranged wife, I believe that's the terminology, from whom he separated, posted a statement on Facebook detailing over 2 decades of alleged domestic abuse. Nicola Gallagher posted on Facebook on May 9th detailing harrowing incidents of alleged domestic abuse. Derry GEA have been contacted for comment regarding the allegations and asked if they'd spoken to Mr Gallagher and if he'd be involved. In a short statement, a spokesperson for Derry GEA said, Derry GEA condemns all forms of domestic violence. We encourage anyone who's experienced domestic violence to report it to the relevant authorities immediately. Well, in a statement through his solicitors, Mr Gallagher said, I've been made aware of a social media post by my estranged wife in which she has made a number of very serious allegations against me. Our marriage broke down over 4 years ago. Those closest to our family are well aware of the reasons for the breakdown of our marriage and the continued issues we've faced since that time. Following long-running court proceedings in family courts in both jurisdictions, I was granted a full residence order in respect of our 3 young children in February 17th of 2023. This outcome was recommended by social services. Mr Gallagher said the allegations made against him have been investigated and dealt with by the relevant authorities before continuing. My focus over the past 4 years has been to protect our children from the ongoing turmoil in our family. I have left this matter in the hands of my legal team and I ask that the privacy of our family is respected at this time. I'll not be making any further public comment on this matter. So that's it. And as I say, until such time as Mr Gallagher made a formal public statement on it, people are seemingly free to say whatever they wish on social media, but the likes of newspapers, radio stations, TV stations are bound by a different set of rules. And as I say, that goes for lots of things that appear on social media. So it doesn't really answer the question as to his future with Derry GEA, or indeed if he'll lead the team out in the Ulster final at the weekend. The GEA said, Derry GEA condemns all form of domestic violence. We encourage anyone who's experienced domestic violence to report it to the relevant authorities immediately. It's a very, very difficult situation. The original statement is still out there from Nicola, and that's his response to that. Okay. Right. How would you fancy your power going out 84 times in 8 months? There have been water outages in areas of Letterkenny on 10 days in the last fortnight. Residents in an area of Letterkenny have experienced 84 water outages since September. The frustrations are being felt mostly in Bonamy, Newmills, Conwall and Tullygay. They face constant water supply issues. It's been raised at the most recent Letterkenny Milford Municipal District meeting. And it's not the first time this has been talked about, of course. Graham Parker joins us. Hi, Graham.
Hi, Greg. How's it going? I'm
okay. I mean, how do you go beyond what's already been outlined? Water on and off 84 times in 8 months. It's an infrequent service, let's say. We can put it like that.
It's something that's been ongoing really for the past 3 years or so. But in the last 6 months, it's gotten much, much worse. We probably only have water in the last few weeks, 1 or 2 days in a week. So, you can't wash your clothes or dishes. Everything just piles up here. You can only shower really when there's enough hot water. And as you say, we have a neighbour here, and she's been marking all the days on my calendar when we've had this disruption since September, and it's been 86 days, which in fairness is probably over 90 at this stage.
Yeah, and what is the problem here? Is it power to a pumping station, or what's going on?
We don't know, because we're not getting answers. Myself and my neighbours will log a ticket with Irish Water, but in all honesty, it's a waste of time. All we seem to get is a reference number, and with this reference number, there's nothing you can do with it. You can't follow it up in any way. If you do log a ticket, I'll either do it through Twitter, or you'll do it. You'll have to ring the help desk, but the help desk puts you through to somebody in India. I have tried escalating the issue, and I actually got a call from Irish Water yesterday. Now, that's the second time I've heard from them, I'd say, in the last 3 years. But she wasn't local. She was from Cork, and I asked her, could we speak to somebody locally, etc., and she basically said no, that it would have to go through the county council.
And the bottom line is, and you've experienced it 84 times, it is Irish Water are aware of a problem, our engineers are looking to fix it, but getting answers beyond that as to what's causing it, is there a permanent solution? Irish Water is pretty faceless, and not just for normal residents, but also for not council officials, but elected reps as well. They are a law unto themselves in terms of trying to get some answers.
That seems to be the case. I do know the county councils have a meeting with Irish Water this morning. I haven't heard how that's gone so far, but Donald Kelly has been kind of acting on our behalf, and he has, he said, he's frustrated as we are at trying to get answers. For example, another thing, I got a text from Irish Water this morning, and I'd imagine that came off the back of that phone call yesterday. But that text states, an inspection of the fault reported will be carried out shortly to determine the potential remediation plan required. You will receive an update once the investigation is closed. So I looked back, and I got the exact same text on the 12th of April and the exact same text on the 10th of February. So I don't know. I'd imagine the investigation has never been closed.
It's beyond. So really we don't know if this is a pump that's failing or if it's continuous breaks in the line. Do we know that much yet, Graham?
Look, we hear sometimes it could be leaks. Yeah, it could be a pump. We've also heard reservoir levels have been low, which is, I find that hard to believe considering where we live and the amount of rain we get. Whether that's connected or not, I don't know. But we hear different bits and pieces, but it's always kind of second-hand information we're getting. We never hear something.
And look, even if it is down to pressure or something along those lines, well, those are water restrictions, and they should be defined as something separate to water outages. If that's what's happening, then residents deserve to know that it's down to low reservoir levels. Though I don't buy that one, Graham, and I don't think you do either. Just try and get out and mow the grass, and you'll see how much it rains here. And listen, we can talk to all the obvious examples, and why not? Shouldn't we? If you've got a young child in the house and you're constantly changing their vests and what have you, and trying to wash whites in dirty water, potentially even just using the shower, as you say, the dishwasher, the damage caused to electric showers, to the dishwasher, washing machine, that's the lived reality, isn't it?
Also, on top of that, we have my 7-year-old son's bad eczema. And we had him at the dermatologist there in the last few weeks, and she's prescribed creams, and she's told us that we have to shower him daily, apply those prescribed creams after the shower. But sure, look, we're lucky if we can shower him a couple of times a week, in all honesty, because we haven't got the water.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, we are making inquiries to Irish Water to see if they'll give us, they're going to have to give us a definitive statement. Whether it's satisfactory or not, I don't know. You've mentioned that Councillor Kelly's been advocating on your behalf. There was a meeting today. Actually, Donald Mandy Kelly's just come out of that meeting and joins us now. He might switch the radio off for us. Donald, good morning.
Good morning, Greg, and good morning to Graham there as well.
Right, you're just out of the meeting. What have they said?
Greg, I suppose they call a spade, and no further forward than I have been. It's absolutely frustrating what's going on here. It's frustrating for them residents. I just got the tail end of Graham there in the Cavan, but I've been engaging with Graham and different residents there within them areas. But listen, but I suppose what they have said is that the situation that is revolving there, they're fully aware of it, which we know because the residents and myself have been logging each and every time that this issue arises, which is, you may say, nearly every second day at this stage. But they have stated that it's not something that's going to be resolved in the short term. But they are carrying out hydraulic module analysis at the minute, which will highlight more. Listen, they call a spade, and I'm not happy one bit of what they've stated today is that to have this rectified, a permanent solution implemented, I suppose, it's going to take anything up to a year or two.
Right, so what is the problem? Are these bursts, or are they struggling to pump the water up as far as these townlands?
The water pressure is the problem, Greg. In my opinion, the infrastructure that's in place is not adequate. The pipes is too small, and I've clearly stated that today to Irish water officials. Also, there is ongoing progress from our own side, I suppose, from the Water Services of Donegal County Council, where they are going to try to implement put in different pumping stations to try to put water on from the likes of Lough Salt direction, from the boreholes in Ballymacool as well, and that will meet the water coming down that feeds this area, which is from Ran. And they're hoping, now this is an experiment, but they're hoping when the three waters come in from the three different areas meet, that it will
increase pressure effectively. Pressure, So is that the work they're saying? Is that an interim solution, or is that the work they're saying could take a year?
No. The work is going to take a year, Greg. Is they're going to have to replace the infrastructure here to have it right. I have also asked today that they go and inspect the reservoir in Ran, and if need be, that another reservoir be erected there, or extend the reservoir that is there, because it's my opinion that the reservoir that's there is too small and can't hold the capacity of water to keep the pressure built up. Mm-hmm. And listen, I'm a local representative. I'm not an engineer, but listen, I'm only reading between the lines, and sometimes, Greg, common sense goes a hell of a long way.
Well, it sounds to me like even if they combine these three water sources to try and to increase the pressure, if the pipe is not wide enough to accommodate extra pressure, we could be talking about more leaks rather than better water.
Well, Greg, that's a possibility. There's no denying that. But, Greg, we have to try something here. And we can't sit back and when Irish Water's telling me that to get a permanent solution is going to take maybe a number of years. We can't sit back that long. These people can't sit back, and that's why I'm pushing forward to have these solutions now put in place and do the work, because I feel that they will work. And listen, I have asked that they put in pumps and the lowland areas within Bomley and Tullygay areas there as well to increase the pressure, but they have stated to me that should they do that they feel you're going to solve a problem in one area and create a problem in another, which is a valid enough point. But listen, going forward, this has to be rectified, and that's the bottom line. I mean, you hear the frustration of Graham, sorry. Mm-hmm. And I raised this at Tuesday's MD meeting as well, and I'm frustrated about this as well. I feel sorry for them residents, in this day and age. I mean, 2023, and I'm like a broken record, Greg, at this stage, but that's absolutely ridiculous.
All right, stay there, Graham. Let's get some reaction from Graham there. Not too positive. Sounds like your neighbour's calendar could be busy for the next year anyway, Graham. It's not terribly encouraging. It's not the fault of Councillor Kelly there. It's just the realities that Irish Water are relating to him. Here's hoping the interim measures might have some sort of a positive impact. I suspect that infrastructure, though, might not be fit to take the extra pressure. What do you think, Graham?
Well, hopefully, look, it'll make some form of difference to us in the interim. But look, from what Donald's saying there, I think it sounds like that it's going to need a lot more. It's going to need pipes replaced, or maybe a pump more locally to ourselves, and it might help the issue. But I don't know. At the end of the day, it seems like he's getting as many answers out of Irish Water as I am.
No, it's all right, Graham. Listen, thanks for that. Finally, Councillor Kelly, we've heard of the problem in Inishowen, and I'm sure it's not isolated there. This is, especially in a housing crisis where we need to be expanding and building more properties. I suspect our water infrastructure, our sewage infrastructure is going to be a serious issue in terms of it's not going to be inflation or the lack of workers. It's actually going to be our infrastructure that's going to stop us building houses that we need, by the sounds of things, the way things are developing.
Yeah, Greg, that's a very valid point, and that's something that was raised there today by my colleague, Councillor Kieran Brogan, as well. Had asked for a detailed report on exactly what you've mentioned there. And listen, to be quite honest, they couldn't answer him straight out today, but they have agreed to come back with a report on that. And Greg, just to mention as well, I have been pushing for a face-to-face meeting with Irish Water. We were recently at a meeting in Kilkenny, now not with Irish Water. It was a seminar, but that's besides the point. But we were told it was an AILG seminar where they told us that Irish Water were conducting face-to-face meetings throughout the country. And I put that as well as my colleagues there today put it to Irish Water, and they've more or less blatantly turned down a face-to-face meeting, which is absolutely shocking, and tried to tell us that this is not happening throughout the country. We're being told one thing by a different body and been told another by Irish Water, but listen, I've stated clearly there, as my colleagues there today, that we are not going to shut back and let Irish Water not come and meet us face-to-face. And it's something that I am going to be pushing forward for going forward, because, Letterkenny's grown, and we're trying to get houses built. And, at the end of the day, Irish Water is the elephant in the room here, and we need to get them around the table and have all these issues addressed once and for all. And just going back, Greg, to the Balmain issue there, and Tullygay and Cornwall and New Mills, these are ongoing issues dating back to 2006. And it's absolutely shocking. 16, 17 years, and you've seen the water there yourself, Balmain, off 84 times since September. The last 2 weeks, they only had water 2 days out of 14 days. That's absolutely ridiculous, and I'm not going to shut back and let this continue, Greg. And I do welcome that measures are going to be put in place now to try to increase the pressure within them areas. And listen, I hope they work. But then the long-term solution is the infrastructure needs to be replaced, and that's something that I'm going to push for going forward, and I'll continue to push for until they do implement the proper pipes to give everyone the proper service they deserve. These people are paying their taxes, they're paying their water bills, they're doing everything right, and they deserve an adequate service like every other individual.
Okay, listen, thank you very much indeed for your time. I appreciate it. That's Councillor Donald Kelly there. You also heard from resident Graham Parker with the life, not the life, but with what they're experiencing there. 086 60 25,000 is the WhatsApp and texts. 086 60 25,000, or give us a call on 074 91 25,000. Right, let's take a break.
The 9 till noon show with Letterkenny Credit Union, now offering mortgages from 40,000 to 600,000 euro with no hidden fees or transaction charges. Letterkenny Credit Union, 9102127.
A public information day on the preferred option for Nadunov Flood Relief Scheme will take place on Thursday the 11th of May in Miva Family Resource Centre from 4 p.m. until 8 p.m. This will be an opportunity for the public to view the option before it goes to the statutory planning process. Attendees will also be able to discuss the option in person with the project team and provide feedback. All are welcome and encouraged to come along anytime between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. No appointment is necessary.
It's where you live. It's where you relax. It's where you make memories. Treat your home to a visit to Cooney's Home Interiors. We have everything in store to help recreate your home. Choose from our extensive range of suites, tables, beds, mattresses and home furnishings for every room. Cooney's Home Interiors, Letterkenny. Style and perfection at incredible value.
Have you started your electric journey?
Unlock electric at McGinley Motors during Volvo Open Week, May 15th to 20th, and experience our award-winning recharge range of plug-in hybrid and fully electric cars. If you place an order before May 20th, you'll receive a complimentary Volvo service plan, covering your first 3 services. Start your electric journey with us and find out more about our exclusive offers at volvocast.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, San Maher is an advocate for Lyme disease. We're speaking to her in the context of it being Lyme Disease Month. Anne, thanks for joining us.
Hiya, Greg. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you on the programme. OK, so as much as you can, describe to us what Lyme disease is.
Lyme disease is a bacterial infection that you get from a tick bite. That's if you know you've got bitten by a tick, or other flying insects too. Horseflies add to the problem as well. It's 28 years nearly since I got sick after a trip in the States. I didn't remember a bite like a lot of our patients. So, I just got sick, and it took 8 years for me to get diagnosed, and that was abroad.
Yeah. And did you go through the process of going to Dr. Lambert and tests in Germany, or was yours a different route?
I was a different route. I was pre-Dr. Lambert. Through an English group, I heard about a doctor in Switzerland, and I travelled over there to be diagnosed, and I had SPECT scans. I had facial paralysis, Greg, so that was an obvious sign that I had Lyme disease with all my other symptoms, but it wasn't recognised here because my blood tests were always negative. So as well as testing for Lyme disease, positive for Lyme disease, I had vasculitis in my brain. I had a SPECT scan in Basel Hospital, which showed up that, and I was at high risk of stroke. I had a co-infection as well, which added to the problem, mycoplasma. Now, the thing is, it was my GP looked after me. I didn't have specialist treatment. My GP followed advice from the doctor in Switzerland. So resulting in years of other complaints as a result of late diagnosis.
And some people never get the diagnoses. We still struggle in this country, do we not, to recognise Lyme disease for what it is. It seems to be, if people go to certain doctors or what have you, that it's anything but Lyme's disease, that it's in your head, that it's this, that it's that, and people's journey can be really, really long and frustrating, and there's not even sometimes any success at the end of that. Why is there such a resistance for the HSE to fully accept how many people are so severely affected by Lyme disease, do you think?
I have no idea. And Dr. Paul McKeown from the HPSC there was articles published on newspapers yesterday, but they still don't deal with the problem of getting diagnosed and the problem of successful treatment. Look, we need just frontline staff, GPs and all need to be educated about what to look out for. I had Bell's palsy, which is one of the neurological signs of Lyme disease, and I still have facial paralysis because of my late diagnosis. So if we were all educated about this, about prevention and about early treatment, and we'd really prevent a lifetime of chronic illness.
But are the health experts, generally speaking, referring people for Lyme disease diagnoses in this country, or are people still having to pay hundreds of euros to do it privately?
Mostly private, Greg, to be honest. I run a little support group on Facebook, Lyme Chat Era, and we nearly have 700 members in a couple of years. And the majority of those people have got diagnosed abroad through German tests. And the problem with the German tests are not recognised here, which is really strange.
And you could multiply by many, many factors the 700 people, because there's so many people out there who think they have something
Ireland
else.
Have thousands of members.
Okay.
You know.
Also, too, I don't understand it. Going back a number of years ago, there was a motion passed and seconded at Donegal County Council, and I believe at that point it was sent to the Office of Public Works, the OPW, to erect signs warning people of the hotspots in Donegal where these ticks may well be. Those signs have yet to appear. Again, they have in other counties. I don't know what the problem here is in Donegal. It's the will of the council. It's been passed to the OPW. Where are these signs?
There haven't been in many counties. I'm from Kilkenny, and our Lord Mayor David Fitzgerald passed a motion last year, and the signs have been erected. Now, but we need the OPW on board because they have the bigger parks, you know. And I don't know what happened in Donegal, because I'd like to say hello to all the Donegal patients that have supported our rallies at Leinster House. And I know they've been fighting for awareness and signs up there, and it hasn't happened.
All right. Well, the HSE have issued Be Tick Aware, Protect Against Lyme Disease. This is according to the HSE and HPSC. There's advice which I'll read out, if not today, certainly at the start of the show tomorrow. They've accepted that there is a threat of Lyme disease from tick bites. If you're going to go that far, well, then let's get the signs up to warn people. Let's get a general acceptance in medicine that it exists. Let's get a streamlined testing in this country. Let's get more awareness out to GPs, and let's get people on the life-saving and life-changing antibiotics just as soon as we possibly can. If we're that interested in public health, this is one area we should not be neglecting.
Yeah. And the MEPs adopted a resolution in the European Parliament in 2018, and there has been no follow-up with that either since, Greg. So I don't know why everything takes so long. You know,
well, you see, the problem I have is, and I remember I had a conversation with Dr. Lambert at a very, very early stage of COVID, and I just get a sense they don't want to deal with it. It's going to be a problem, and they're going to do the exact same with long COVID as well. It's all in your mind. It's something else.
And Dr. Lambert is treating long COVID patients as well as chronic Lyme patients. He understands. He just knows, you know.
Yes, but he can't. He's an outlier, and he's not going to be in that position forever. So, you know, the gaps need to be filled. Right. Okay. And thanks for helping us make some awareness here.
Thanks. And TikTok Ireland are having a conference in Portlaoise on the 27th for anyone that's interested in learning more about our situation.
Okay, TikTok. All right, Anne, thanks very much indeed for that. Okay, take care of yourself. Bye-bye. Anne Maher there. Wear long trousers, long sleeve shirts and shoes. Wear a hat, tuck in your hair. Use an insect repellent. Check skin, hair and warm skin folds for ticks after a day out. Checking for ticks and removing any from your pet's clothing's outdoor gear. Removing any ticks and consulting with a GP if symptoms develop. And if you feel it could be that, don't leave until you get some sort of satisfaction. We might return to that again before the end of May. It's such an important issue. Have a lovely day. We're back with you tomorrow at 9.
The 9 till